Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, all brought to you by FanDuel. Coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies. Talking top free agents at every position here today, Sam.
Coming at you from the kindergarten, the childminders.
Yeah.
What's the child care? Daycare. There you go. Daycare.
CTM daycare going on here.
That's what you guys call it.
We got one more day. You going to be okay?
I'm going to be fine.
You going to power through?
I'm not the person to be worried about
I'm
here.
fine, too.
I
mean, my kids are here once again. For those just tuning in, I've got my 5- and 7-year-old.
Yeah. The TV's struggling.
Yonder.
The TV's struggling, and that's not helpful.
Yeah, the TV.
It's an old TV. It's like,
yeah.
It feels like, back in the day when your computer used to get old and slow and you reset it.
That's what the TV's
purge
doing
it. You install it from start. You reboot,
yeah.
Purge the whole thing and begin again, right? That's kind of what that TV seems to need, except I don't know that would help.
Yeah.
So it's just slow.
Well, that's supposed to keep them entertained.
It's not going
for
well.
the 2 hours.
Yeah, at the moment it's a black screen.
Yeah, it's not going well. So we'll see how Toby and Benny handle it today. We'll let you know. But today we're going through free agency. It is yesterday we talked cut candidates, which coincides with today. So if you missed yesterday, we went through a slew of names who could be added to this list. But free agency is upon us in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And just from a scheduling perspective, mention that in a minute. But we talked about maybe like free agency is not top heavy. But when you go through the names, again, there's a lot of player movement that's going to be going down here. There's a lot of teams that are either going to lose 3, 4, 5 starters from what they had last year, and other teams that could pick up a few starters. So there's some important movement coming in a few weeks here.
Starters and, those kind of depth positions where any position where you're rotating players anyway, running back is not the bell cow position that it used to be. Like most teams are playing with some form of fairly heavy committee these days. There's a ton of running backs available that you would want to add to your backfield. So, yeah, it's not, again, it's absent star power, but that's just the way the NFL is now. But there are a lot of depth players.
And then from a timing perspective, next week is the NFL Scouting Combine, and I know people hear me talk about the Combine all the time. For most people listening, there's a few of our friends and executives around the league where this doesn't apply. But for most people listening, the Combine really starts like next Thursday through Sunday as far as workouts go.
For the watching public.
Yes, for the watching public. For us, it starts Monday. For some people, it starts this Sunday, where people get into town. And this is where I like to – it's the illegal tampering period that starts next week. So next week, it's just what if Raj walked in, right? The principal walked in to the JW Marriott and all these agents are talking to all these
Suddenly
NFL –
silence descends on the
right,
room.
it's like what else are you going to talk – they're all legally tampering, talking, hey, my player's free in a couple weeks. Got some terms? What do you think? What are you thinking? 3 years? 4 years? 1 year with an option? What are we thinking here?
Yeah.
It's all happening next week.
It is, yeah. The Combine is when all these conversations start.
Prime 47.
Yeah.
I will say, not that I want people stalking us or anything, we do have a somewhat late in the evening Prime reservation. Right around the time, Prime 47, special spot, Sam.
Yeah.
Right around the time, it's like the last steak dinner goes out, and then they just start pulling chairs and tables, and it becomes a club.
Has Mark arranged that specifically because he wants to see that?
I think he does.
Yeah.
I think our boss, the boss right below the boss, I think he wants to see what happens. I think he wants to be the last dinner at Prime before
the transition.
Yeah, before Jerry rolls in.
Right.
And everybody else. And that's where the real business goes down until about 5 in the morning at Prime. Mm-hmm. So that's all next week at the Scouting Combine.
Yep.
So we're going to preview free agency so everybody's ready. And so then coming out of the Scouting Combine, you're pretty much 2 weeks away from the league year starting second week of March. And it's that Monday, the second Monday of March, where the legal tampering starts. And we start to hear some deals coming through.
That's the thing. The week in Indy also provides, so it's the week where everyone starts the illegal tampering, which also means that all the insiders get started on what the rumors are, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they hear what has just been arranged illegally by all the NFL people, and then they can start putting out the rumors of here's what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
It's a beautiful week. So we'll be, we're not reporters, so to speak, but we'll be ear to the grindstone next week. And
ear to the grindstone.
Is that right? Did I say that the right way?
We'll
be listening for stuff.
Yeah, right.
Steak and Shake, too. You never know. Steak and Shake, late night, deals go down. The deals go down. All right. Free agency for this year. We're gonna go position by position, hit on some key names. Not necessarily a ranking, but the key names that you need to know.
Yep.
Anything else at
Nope.
the top here? You ready to go?
Yeah, let's go. I mean,
Start with
the quicker we can get this done, the better, I feel, today.
Oh, no, this will be fun. Kids are doing all right. What happened to the TV now? Really,
I don't know.
It's now in a
it's
tiny
like picture-in-picture, but there's no other picture.
there's just
it's a tough scene.
1/6 of the TVs being used for the Reds highlights that they found.
It's like being in 1984.
Yeah. I don't know what you did to the TV, kid, but keep working at it. All right, let's start with the quarterbacks. The biggest name, the name to watch, we've discussed here a few different times, is Malik Willis. Technically, Daniel Jones,
Yeah.
also a free agent, but the quarterback class, Malik Willis, potential for a long-term deal, multi-year deal, and then Daniel Jones, a potential. Yeah, I think the expectation is some sort of deal going back to Indianapolis because he's coming off the ACL. Let's start with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
He's up on the screen.
Nominally the top name, I guess, in the free agent class at quarterback this year. As you said, coming off the ACL. Also, the Colts have been sort of fairly vocal that they want to bring him back. So now it's one thing saying that; it's another thing getting it done, and that I think becomes more complicated with the ACL injury. Like it would have been complicated anyway, given the kind of season that he was having, i.e., starting it absolutely on fire and then tailing off as the year went on. Especially given his career history at this point as well. Just putting a value on what Daniel Jones is at this point, I think, is extremely difficult. So I think it would have been challenging anyway. And now you have the complicating factor of he's coming off that ACL injury. It's going to be, I think, a tricky contract to work out, but one I think that both sides probably want to get done.
I think they will. I mean, the Colts, after years of the Chris Ballard era, I mean, is he the longest tenured GM at this point? He's not, but he's close, right? He's got to be close. It's not Howie necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there
but
a while.
He's close.
I mean, even Howie had to take the back step during the Chip Kelly year.
But Ballard's been there forever. And the cycling of quarterbacks, I was listening to a little bit of NFL radio on Sirius. I can't remember who said it the other day, but was kind of making the comparison that the Colts, and I don't know if this is based off of conversations or whatever, that the Colts feel like they've got an Andrew Luck type of quarterback from a person and culture standpoint with Jones. I don't know if they were necessarily comparing him as a player, but
You would hope not.
no, look, I think we all struggle with when you have a quarterback who, if you're just doing blind rankings, is 15th, 18th, wherever he would be, and the quarterbacks who rank there can have top 10 caliber seasons, and Jones was on his way to that for a bit before he tapered off and then had the injury. So I think they at least have a dependable option, and they could easily look at this and say we started 8-1, they end up 8-5 with Jones officially as the starter. He has career highs in most passing metrics, and they say, look, this is what we're going to do. And the other, we're just going to roll with Jones and say we could scheme around it. We could use his running ability. He's going to run the offense, and we'll just build around him. The other piece of news while we're here that has come out over the last few days is Anthony Richardson being a trade candidate, which is not surprising.
Yeah.
And that, especially given the Sam Darnold thing, like the fact that Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl is, I mean, we think in sample sizes a lot, but people are going to think about, Sam Darnold, reclamation project. Who's going to take a shot on Anthony Richardson? While we're here, I think that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, the second they basically decided to bench him effectively, I think Richardson became a trade candidate over whatever time period. I wouldn't want to be starting Anthony Richardson anytime soon, but he would absolutely be if you think the way that the Packers identified Malik Willis, whether that was from I assume, based off how he was playing at that point, it would have been almost entirely a college scouting, priors type of evaluation, right? We liked some of the things this guy did on his college tape, and okay, it's been terrible so far in Tennessee, but, we like the kid. But the way the Packers went and brought in Malik Willis, and then Matt LaFleur worked his magic on him, and suddenly Malik Willis is like the hottest property in the quarterback market this offseason. I mean, Richardson has better physical tools across the board than Malik Willis. And Malik Willis's physical tools are good. But Richardson's bigger, faster, has a bigger arm. He's got everything is bigger and better than Malik Willis, except perhaps, injury rate. But like if you were a quarterback coach or a guy that liked Richardson at some point in the process, you'd be like, yeah, if we can bring him in for not that much and we can sit him and try and figure out what we can get out of him. I mean, I would imagine most quarterback coaches, offensive coordinators, like guys that like quarterbacks would want to take a swing on figuring out what they could do with them.
And then if you're a team like the Jets that has some serious questions about whether or not they want to draft somebody this year, but they know they're set up for next year when there's more quarterbacks, why not take a flyer on a Richardson? And if he works out, great. Maybe use all that draft capital on non-QBs. If he doesn't work out, fine. You're in position to draft quarterbacks next year potentially. So,
but I think there's a bunch of guys now in that bucket of like who would be again like the next Sam Darnold. But if you were trying to say, like if the copycat league thing, the lesson I would be taking from that is not necessarily let's take a guy that was bad somewhere else and hope he's good for us, right? Which is kind of what happened. I would be saying, okay, the lesson here between Darnold, between Geno Smith, between some of these other guys is you can still get it later in your career. Like you can still develop years into your career, right? And even if it hasn't gone well and maybe you don't want those guys starting and maybe there's development to be done from the sideline, you can take a guy that has effectively failed in the NFL so far and resuscitate his career later on, as long as you don't need to start him from day one. So that puts Anthony Richardson on the map. That puts people like Will Levis on the map, right? Like you can put together a highlight reel from Will Levis, and his lowlight reel is the worst in NFL history. But his highlight reel, you can put together an NFL highlight reel from Will Levis that makes you go, ooh, there's something there.
I would argue, too, that
so those two, yeah. Mac Jones, all these other people, like there's a list of those guys who are like, I'd want that guy on my roster.
I would argue that Richardson might be the most intriguing, though, because his failure in Indianapolis was injury-based. He missed so much time. I mean, there was a point 2 years into his career, I'm like, he hasn't played 3 games in a row in 2 years. He's played whatever. He hasn't started and finished 3 games in a row. He's been injured 5 times in 2 years. Then there was the opt-out situation. It was more mental, and it was more culture and locker room and the whole deal. But there were stretches of play where Richardson played really well. It wasn't an on-field failure. There were other times where the accuracy was all over the place and awful. But there were stretches of play where he showed enough accuracy, running ability, and, of course, the big arm showed up on the field. So I think Richardson, of all of those, and think about Richardson versus a Mac Jones, as you said, as like a second chance opportunity. Completely different players as far as tools and skill set and how they operate the offense. I think Richardson could be the most intriguing, assuming you get past the idea that, he got injured one time and opted out on a 3rd and long or whatever it was, and the Colts hated it, and they're trying to get rid of him for that. So I think the Richardson story is going to be a big one here during free agency as well. Assuming Daniel Jones is going back. Now he's coming off an Achilles, and you got to figure out
Achilles or ACL.
Achilles.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yes,
we've been saying ACL.
We had Achilles in the note. I don't know why I said ACL. Did you say ACL?
I said ACL only because you said ACL. So you.
I didn't say it today.
You did.
Did I?
Yeah. So you led off with.
It's my bad. I apologize. I retract that. I know it's an Achilles. It's in. See those notes on the screen?
Yeah, it's right there.
I wrote those notes.
Yeah,
I wrote those notes. So.
Well, I retract by having been led down a bad pathway by Steve.
It's my bad. It's my bad. It's an Achilles.
Pretty sure you started that.
I think I said it off air.
No, I'm pretty sure you said it.
That's
live.
possible. Anyway. I'll take the blame.
Hopefully.
Take blame
Otherwise,
sometimes.
I just said it and we're all wrong.
But he was banged up, like both, he had his knee was hurt and then he tore his Achilles. So both things happened. Anyway, let's talk Malik Willis.
Last name, by the way, that I would throw into the potential reclamation, long-term, backup, see what he can do thing is Kenny Pickett. I mean, it's not been good. And he probably doesn't have the ceiling that these other guys do, in that he went in the first round because the Steelers needed a quarterback, and that was the top one on the list, not because he actually belonged there necessarily. But, in a world of maybe he gets it years down the line, I'd have Kenny Pickett as a backup.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But I think the other guys might get a starting opportunity if there's not enough
I wouldn't want to
starters.
start any of those guys.
I wouldn't
I'm just
want
saying,
to.
as my reclamation project is long term. It's not if I need a quarterback now, I want one of these guys.
I'm saying the Jets feel like one where it just makes sense. The same way the Fields thing makes sense. I know we live in a world where people just want to say, "Oh, you stupid Jets! You brought in Justin Fields. What did you expect?" And right at the time, I said, "Well, what's the alternative for the Jets, who are restarting?
Yeah,
starting from scratch. You take a shot on Justin Fields. If it doesn't work, you walk away. And it didn't work, so you walk away. Try another one, Anthony Richardson. All right, if it doesn't work, you walk away. You've got 1 million draft picks for next year. You're set up to draft a quarterback. That's the type of team that you do it. Now, I'm not saying bring Anthony Richardson in and whoever, a team that's trying to make a playoff push or something is thinking he's going to be the next Sam Darnold, literally, and come in and be a playoff caliber quarterback. But I think the Jets feel like a perfect type of player or
landing
team
spot. Yeah, I just think there's probably some value to the reset. I don't think just taking him from one team and throwing him to another team is probably the way you get that random rejuvenation. I think you probably need some kind of hard reset from you're a backup, take a beat, figure out what you need to get better at, start thinking on that. And even just the change in mindset of don't worry about leading a team right now. You're the backup guy. Just concentrate on being the best quarterback you can be. That's the thing that actually creates some kind of hard reset in a quarterback's head, and maybe then they can start quite soon afterwards. But I wouldn't want to be starting any of these guys early.
All right, let's go. Let's go Malik Willis. I can't remember which show it was. I think I threw out all the stats, and we've broken him down quite a bit, but let's go through it again. Malik Willis, night and day compared to his Titans time. His time with the Packers.
Different players.
78.7% completion percentage for Malik Willis with the Packers after completing 53% of his passes with the Titans. There was a point where Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson early in their career were completing under 60%, and then they both bumped up like 10% increases in their completion percentage back at the time when you'd say, hey, accuracy doesn't improve. And I know completion percentage is not a direct proxy for accuracy, but this was insane. Malik Willis looking completely unprepared to start as a quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. And immediately, when he had an opportunity as a backup with the Packers, footwork was different, accuracy was different, ball location, and then, oh, by the way, he's an incredible athlete. We already knew that in Tennessee. He had to just rely on his athleticism there. But with Green Bay, it's been a good mix of downfield accuracy plus athleticism. It's all in a tiny, tiny sample size for a player that you're thinking about a long-term option. But it's so intriguing because of how good it has looked in Green Bay.
It's been crazy, like absolutely ridiculous. Renner had a tweet that said Willis went 13 of 15 for 456 yards and 2 touchdowns on deep passes with the Packers. Like that's
I just pulled that up. So say 13 of 15.
Yeah.
For 456.
And deep accuracy is it's between 30 and 50% as a completion rate generally, right? Like 13 of 15 is absolutely ridiculous. So the obvious, really taken as read part of that is I had somebody reply to that being like, completely unsustainable. You're like, well, yeah. Of course it's unsustainable. If he was able to go 13 of 15 for 450 as a deep passer always, he would be by far the greatest quarterback that's ever set foot on the planet. He's probably not that guy. But the point is, that's like a completely different level of absurd. You made the point the last show we were talking about him, I think, that remember, it wasn't just terrible in Tennessee. It was completely non-viable. I think you're right that Vrabel benched him in a preseason game because he was like, look,
he missed a read and ran in a preseason game, and Vrabel's like, no, that's not it.
But he was like, I don't want to see you running. Like, I know you can run. I want to see you working from the pocket. I want to see you reading a defense. I want to see you working through a progression. That's the stuff you're not good at. I know you can run. Don't run anymore, right? That's what preseason is for, working on your weaknesses. And he went from that guy to, again, suddenly the Packers decide we're going to identify him as the guy to go get. They bring him in. And almost immediately, anytime he was remember quite early on, Jordan Love got hurt, and it was like Malik Willis got to come in for a couple of games. And everyone's like, man, what kind of rudimentary, option-based Mickey Mouse offense is Matt LaFleur going to have to craft for Malik Willis to actually be able to operate this offense and make it look like it functions? And, okay, the first game, I think, was reasonably, there was quite a lot of design run stuff in there, but almost immediately they were like, no, he can just run this offense and look really good doing it. So LaFleur just worked his magic on this guy like instantly. And okay, it's still an extremely small sample size, and maybe it does require Matt LaFleur's magic to make work. But look at the sort of, on the flip side, he's 26 years old. He's got a rocket arm. He's incredibly athletic. He's like stout and strong as well. And he has demonstrated an incredible development in his game. Again, it's not like he's just, like, this hasn't looked like a guy who's doing the same things, right? He's not still just like one read, fire a bullet into a tight window and hope it gets there, and if it doesn't, we've got problems. Like, he's demonstrated an ability to read a defense, to work through progressions. Like, he's shown different things, even if it is in a small sample size. Like, it isn't like he's just hit the other end of variance.
There were plays in the Ravens game where he was outstanding. They ended up losing because they gave up 900 yards on the ground or whatever it was.
Right.
But Willis, in rhythm, passing, throwing the ball in rhythm accurately, throwing the ball downfield, all the stats that we've talked about. There were times where he would keep it on a run play, and the defense had it played perfectly, chalkboard-wise. Like, everybody was in position. He just outruns Marlon Humphrey, outruns the defense, and picks up 10. Bad play calls where things are all covered up, and he just, scrambles for 15. And so it is, look, we'll see what he could do elsewhere. And then the question always is, just like when someone leaves Kyle Shanahan, you see Kyle Shanahan elevate a quarterback or whatever, and then it's like, well, what happens when he leaves him, or what happens when they leave their QB guru, whatever, whoever it is. But Matt LaFleur has done a great job here. And if a new team gets similar footwork, the timing and rhythm that Willis learned in Green Bay, clearly didn't have with Tennessee, but learned in Green Bay, and then sprinkle in the QB design run game 8 to 10 times a game with Willis. You could do that 8 to 10 times, helps open up the field. There's a lot here. A lot here. Our friend, we were on our 33rd team secret expert call last night. Greg Cosell did bring up a good point. He has not thrown the ball more than like 24, 25 times ever in a game. So that's a question.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you handle high volume? How do you handle a game when you have to go win it versus the game flow in the first and second quarter? There's a lot of unknowns here with Willis just because he hasn't played a lot of football. But an unbelievable night and day difference between him and Tennessee and Green Bay, and that makes him so intriguing in a thin quarterback market.
Yeah, and look, small sample sizes are inherently scary. I mean, the chat's coming up with them. We can all think of quarterbacks that got some kind of deal based off a really small sample size. The track record of those guys is generally not great. Matt Flynn lit up had a 6-touchdown game and got the bag from Seattle off the back of that, and they ended up basically almost immediately turning to Russell Wilson instead. Remember, Joe Milton had this incredible game at the end of a season for the Patriots, and everyone's like, oh, maybe Joe Milton's actually the best quarterback of that draft class. Randomly, Dallas ends up trading for him for a backup job. Every time he's come in since that, he hasn't looked like the same guy at all. So maybe Malik Willis has caught the high end of variance, and the small sample size is just tantalizing people for what he could be. But in a quarterback marketplace that might be, if the Colts re-sign Daniel Jones, right, then it's like geriatric Aaron Rodgers, mercenary for hire for 5 minutes until he gets hurt, or a series of reclamation / backups. Like, Malik Willis is the only guy that you can talk yourself into. He could be a good starter.
Yeah, so it's one of our biggest offseason stories. Keep an eye on Malik Willis here. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers, technically a free agent. There were rumblings yesterday, Sam, that it's a very slim chance that he's going to play. Who knows?
At all?
I just wonder, Aaron doesn't talk to anybody. So how does anyone have any kind of insight on Aaron Rodgers? I can't imagine he's even hinted to the Steelers what he wants to do. So how is anyone getting any kind of insider information rather than just theorizing and say, oh, it's a slim chance he's going to play? I'll put that report out tomorrow, and I won't be wrong. Right, slim chance he's going to play, but he's mulling retirement. And we'll see what happens with Rodgers. He wanted to go to the Vikings last year. There are some rumors that the Vikings might go.
They might have identified.
Well, they're going the veteran quarterback route. They're trying to.
Yeah.
They're already starting to, I don't know, they're trashing JJ internally. It's all coming out. So just keep an eye on the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, if JJ was never really, and we always had this conversation from day one. Like, we don't know what the internal feeling of McCarthy was like. We do know they tried to trade up for Drake May and that they love Drake May. We don't know how far behind Drake May JJ McCarthy was in the pecking order in that draft. And everyone just sort of assumes, they got their guy because they said it. But, like, maybe Kevin O'Connell hated J.J. McCarthy from day one. Like, never thought he was any good. Just decided, God, I guess we're stuck with this guy. And that's who they went with, right? And based off, 5 minutes in a preseason game where he looked really good, it's like, they love him. But, if he never bought into him at all, and he's just, dealing with this 9 guy, and you're like, oh, God, then I'm sure he's desperate for somebody to take over that job.
So we'll keep an eye on the Vikings, but I think Rodgers is, we'll see. Steelers are bust. It's my guess for Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's probably more likely retirement, but we shall see. As you said, there's not really a whole lot of other, free agent quarterbacks. Technically, Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota.
I guess technically, we probably also need to mention that Derek Carr is a free agent quarterback, right?
Derek Carr's put it out there.
Is he a free agent, or do the Saints own him?
I believe the Saints still own his rights. He's not on any free agent lists.
Yeah, but that's because he's retired.
Right. But I think they would own his rights.
He remains under contract with the New Orleans Saints on the reserve retired list, blah, blah, blah.
But he's the only other, and again, in a thin quarterback market where we say there's probably one quarterback locked into the top 10, there's differing opinions about Ty Simpson and even who QB 2 and 3 are in the draft. Malik Willis is a tiny sample size, maybe only long-term option right now thanks to Daniel Jones' Achilles injury. Then you throw Derek Carr into the mix, 1 year removed from retirement, and there might be some options.
Yeah, so Carr has to unretire, and then his contract resumes, allowing the Saints to trade him for to avoid a massive dead cap hit, presumably for not much.
Right. So just keep an eye on that as well. Candidate to be traded, Derek Carr.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go running backs here. I mentioned the other day, on the cut list, with a lot of the potential cuts are fairly big-name running backs.
This is great. Like, if you need a running back, even if it's just like one member of a backfield, this is a great free agency period for running backs.
So the 2022 draft featured Travis Etienne getting drafted late first round. It featured Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker both getting drafted fairly early in the second round. And all three of those guys, Javonte Williams, right, early in the second as well. No, he was early. He was the year before. But all three of those guys, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, all hitting free agency here. So Hall and Walker, both, because they weren't first rounders, 4-year contracts, standard 4-year contracts. They're just going to hit free agency. Etienne did not have his 5th-year option picked up by the Jags.
They're different draft classes. Etienne and Breece Hall. Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker are the same draft class.
Etienne had his 5th-year option picked up, and now he hits free agency.
Right.
Is what it was. It was more, sorry, I'm confusing things. Hall and Walker were the first two running backs off the board in 22, both second-rounders, and both teams letting them hit free agency here, including Walker coming off of his Super Bowl MVP.
Correct. Yes.
So there's some decent players who are just, hitting year 5.
Yeah, well, those guys, right, those are the, second contract, prime, free agent period type players. Like those, that's the closest we're getting to the old cycle of you play out your rookie deal, you become a superstar player, then you go get paid in the second deal, hitting your prime, coming into the second contract. The only time that's really happening anymore is with running backs, where even a team like Seattle, the guy is literally coming off a Super Bowl MVP. It doesn't get any better than that in terms of the final thing you saw before free agency. Theoretically, right now, as far as the reports are, even that guy, the team is like, probably don't want to give you a top of the market, elite, high end running back deal. Let someone else make that contract. So that's really the only position that's happening with anymore. But it does mean that you get those two guys, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker in particular. I mean, I think they've both demonstrated they can be lead all around, everything backs in a backfield. Travis Etienne's a bit different in that I think he's more limited or I don't want to say one-trick pony, but more of that style of player. He's an explosive running back. He works outside very well. I don't know that he has the inside run between the tackles ability that those two guys have. You've also got the career rejuvenation of Javonte Williams off the back of that Dallas season. I mean, last season when he signed, it was like not a waste, but like this was emblematic of Dallas's lack of ambition. Is all they did to fix running back was go get Javonte Williams, who's been broken and busted and hasn't looked like the player that he was before injury. And then all of a sudden, Javonte Williams, behind what was not seen as a particularly good offensive line, has a great year.
I thought it was actually shrewd by Dallas to go that route after, years ago paying Zeke Elliott. So Javonte Williams, first 2 years of his career, looked very good, had all those injuries, looked like he was a far cry from his best year was his rookie season.
Yeah.
Back in 2021.
He was in the ETN draft class, right?
Yes. And so last year was the best Javonte Williams looked, I would say, since his rookie year. He was number 4 in the NFL, 3.6 yards after contact per rush. The question for Javonte, I think, versus some of those other guys is his ability in the pass game. He's not as smooth of a receiver, not as good or dynamic after the catch with the ball in his hands or catching the ball out of the backfield. But as a good, dependable runner, that was a nice 1-year deal for Dallas and for Javonte, I think, to prove that he could get back on track. Just going back to some of those other guys with Ken Walker coming off the MVP, since entering the league, number 2 in the league in missed tackles forced per attempt. He's been in a bit of a timeshare with Zach Charbonnet, and then you see when Charbonnet gets hurt, Walker takes the workload and looks great down the stretch for the Seahawks on the way to the MVP. A unique runner in that he's got this combination of loves to bounce it outside and big play hunt, but he also showed a bunch of runs in that Super Bowl where he was incredibly patient, set up blockers, hits the hole, and gets what's there. So I think Walker might be hitting his stride as a runner right now too. And again, you're always afraid of the history of second contract running backs, but in year 5, years 5, 6, and 7, it's not like you're going to see this massive drop off. I think over the next couple of years, it's just a matter of, do you want to pay 12 to 15 million for some of these guys, or do you want to pay, 6 million for like a Tyler Algier or something like that? So those are the questions I think teams. And Algier hits free agency after 4 years with.
Well, that's the thing. So then you get to the second wave of running backs in free agency, and there's so many good running backs that's why. The question is, what is the top of the market going to get, because the second wave of the market is so strong? Like in years gone past, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, those guys would be getting huge money in free agency because there's money to spend and they're the top of the market, and that's just how it works. Now, teams I think will be looking at this and going, I could pay Tyler Algier, I could pay Rashad White, I can pay, one of these other running backs. How much money do I really want to dedicate to a Ken Walker or a Breece Hall, particularly in an era when the bell cow running back is dead? Like, most teams are not, you used to give these guys top of the market money because he was going to play every single down, every single snap, and rarely come off the field, and that it kind of made some sense financially. Now, nobody's doing that with their running backs anyway, right? Like even Kenneth Walker, before Charbonnet got hurt, it was a split backfield, and only when Charbonnet went down did Kenneth Walker become the every down back that would justify that kind of money. So if I'm going to be splitting their time anyway, why do I want to pay him top of the market money?
Some of the we talked about Breece Hall for a minute, just to touch on him really quick. As a receiver, one of the better options here. Remember, the Chiefs wanted to trade for him.
Yeah.
Before the middle of last season, didn't want to give up a third rounder. I think they offered a 4. He's coming off a career high in rushing yards despite an awful offense for the Jets. One of the better receiving options. He can run those wheel routes and is great on screens. So he brings maybe the best receiving ability of the group here. So it's an intriguing running back class with
And
Hall.
this was a bounce back year for him in terms of he looked back to his best as explosive. Like, remember, he got injured and then he didn't look quite as explosive anymore. It's like, maybe he's already like on the decline. And then this year he really bounced back physically and looked a lot more like the early version of Breece Hall.
And just to fly through some other names, Rico Dowdle.
Yes.
If we had the Dowdle. Wish we had.
Hot button.
We need that. That's really the first thing that we need.
No. That's second. Whoop and stick is definitely first.
Look at this stat I pulled up, Sam. You got to look at the monitor.
Look at
61% of his rushing yards last year came in a 5-week stretch. 61, and he was over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Right. So the middle of the year, he just takes over. Chuba Hubbard's hurt. Dowdle eliciting screams from announcers from Eric Collins. Mm-hmm. Dowdle looked great and then tapered off. Yep. After that. So what do you do with that? But he was with Dallas 2 years ago. He was with Panthers last year, over 1,000 yards each of those years. By the way, I'm only using 1,000 yards as like a descriptor, not like a massive, landmark number like it used to be, just so you know. But the inconsistency there, he's 28 years old, ancient. Yeah. Just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely an intriguing running back. He's one of the names on my list of guys that I would be interested in. I don't think, again, he's not at the level of the top couple of guys. He's also not a guy I think that I would necessarily want to have as a bell cow back. But again, most people are not doing that anymore, so it's not really that relevant. The guy I think that you would really be targeting, or that I would be targeting from the entire running back class, is your guy, Tyler Algier, the guy that looked fantastic for Atlanta until they were like, you know what? Bijan Robinson is too good to turn down. We're going to go with him as well. And then you have this split backfield. But Tyler Algier holds his own in a backfield that has Bijan Robinson in it. I would absolutely be looking to bring him in. Another name.
Really quick, I like Algier a lot.
Yeah.
Always have. I think he's a very good zone runner. Very good zone runner. Just gets what's there. Good after contact. I wonder, because one of the other free agents is Rachaad White from the Bucs, who I think has been a little hit or miss as a runner. Pretty good catching the ball out of the backfield.
He's good, really good receiver.
But I wonder if Algier. I don't know. I haven't talked to Zach about this. I don't know. I wonder how much he liked Algier as a change of pace. Could be a fit in Tampa Bay with Zach Robinson going there as offensive coordinator and to complement Bucky Irving. So just something to keep an eye on.
Or even if you wanted to completely overhaul your backfield, like if you added Tyler Algier and Rachaad White. Like that right
is
there
a good 1-2 punch.
Is a 1-2 punch in terms of this guy's the bowling ball, this guy's the receiving third down back. I've got a backfield in those two.
In the Cowboys, once again, like the history of the Cowboys and Jerry Jones being the GM, and people think that he's just this crazy owner with no sort of forward-thinking approach. I think since they made a mistake on the Zeke contract,
right,
they have handled the running back position really well, right? They developed Rico Dowdle, let him walk. They bring in Javonte Williams. They're going to let him walk. Would they be the team that spends $12 million across two backs instead of $12 million for one Kenneth Walker?
That's the thing.
It's $12 million for Tyler Algier and Rachaad White, as you said, as a 1-2 punch that are great complements to each other, and you're not over-investing in the position, just using that as
like it's pure fantasy football at this point. But you might genuinely be able to get those two guys for the same money as either Breece Hall or Ken Walker. And just the way the NFL is, I think I would prefer the two guys rather than the one.
Anything else?
You got to mention J.K. Dobbins because the dude is just amazing. Like somehow he's always hurt, but when he isn't hurt, even though he's still only 27 years old, always dealing with some kind of injury. But the second he gets back from the injury, even though at this point like both of his legs are in bits, he's suffered every major catastrophic injury that a running back can suffer. And yet every time he makes it back, the second he's on the field, it makes the offense better. No matter where the offense is.
Bubble wrap candidate?
No, because he's going to get hurt soon. There's no point. You can't bubble wrap him. I mean, unless you're literally just like, I only want him for the playoffs.
Unleash
and
in
hopefully
January.
he can last 4 games.
He just becomes like Chiefs running back in January.
At some point, I want to bank on the idea that Like, he has to get at some stage a run of good luck when it comes to injuries.
Any other running backs worth discussing?
I refuse to believe that he's just permanently made of, like, sugar glass, and he's always going to be hurt.
It's my time of year. Give me all the Jason Verrett's and J.K. Dobbins.
I almost just want to reward him for the endurance and the perseverance to keep coming back at this point. I mean, again, like, he's only 27 years old, and it feels like he's, like, 35 and has dealt with every injury that running backs had. It's just he's had 3 or 4 injuries that most running backs, like, it would be the end of that running back. He would never be the same guy again. And yet what's so remarkable about Dobbins is every time he's back, he looks like he's still really good.
You ever want to go to the NBA Finals?
Sure.
Well, now's your chance. Courtesy of FanDuel. All you have to do is use your profit boost on an NBA future. You'll be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. NBA futures let you lock in your pick for who you think will go all the way, whether it's a team to win the championship or a conference title. Visit FanDuel.com/3030 to get started. You can play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sam and I had some NBA Finals picks yesterday, so go check that out on Wednesday's show. You must be 21 plus and present in select states. And for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. No purchase necessary. Limit 1 entry for profit boost token only. Opt-in required. Must apply. Profit boost token on select markets. Restrictions apply. See full terms, including methods of entry at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, we're going to move on to the wide receiver group for free agents. And things look, the running back group might be the deepest, as far as pound for pound. But as far as impact goes, the receiver group has some legs here. The biggest name, of course, being George Pickens, and we might not even see him hit free agency. We might get Pickens as a franchise tag candidate here for the Cowboys. He's the biggest name. But we have other names. We have Alec Pierce out there. We have Jawan Jennings. You have Mike Evans. In the report that we discussed yesterday, that Mike Evans is going to, explore the market?
Explore the market.
He's going to explore it. And he might not be a buck for life. So there are some receivers to be had here in free agency.
Yep. Genuinely no idea what they've done to that. The picture-in-picture thing that isn't a picture-in-picture.
Appreciate you trying to.
Don't know what they've done.
Is it just YouTube or is it because look, there it is.
I don't know.
Is it just the YouTube video?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it a setting in the video?
Maybe, but I can't find it if it is. Anyway, obviously Pickens is the big domino to fall, the true number 1 superstar wide receiver who really only showed that this year. I mean, he's shown the ability to be a high-end player and the spectacular contested catches and the amazing ball tracking ability and all that kind of stuff. But this was the first year where you're like, wow, he really has everything. Absolutely exploded production-wise in that Dallas Cowboys offense, and you would assume they're bringing him back, whether it's franchise tag with a long-term deal somewhere in the negotiations, blah blah blah. You would assume he's not hitting the open market, but there are some really interesting wide receivers in this crowd. Like, this is, again, if you're in need of I always think of the Jamar Chase impact. Like, if you're in need of the true number 1 guy that comes in and immediately transforms your entire offense because he's the missing piece, maybe not your year. If you're in need of just upgrading your receiving core, like 2 through 5, this is your free agent group. There's a ton of guys to throw some money at.
And as always, different skill sets. Just to finish the Pickens discussion where he had career highs in every major number. I don't know if we came up with a buyer beware list or if we're going to do that officially later, but of course the questions on Pickens are going to be, okay, he's only really had that one dominant year. It's in a contract year. Mm-hmm. The number of players, as you're going through this list, like Kyle Pitts, was this his best year in a contract year? Pickens, best year in his contract year. What do you do with that? He's still only 25, extremely talented, but does the money change things? It's a fair question when you're saying, like, we're investing in this guy as a number 1 if you're not the Cowboys. Now, if you're the Cowboys, do you get one more year out of him, pair him with CeeDee Lamb, give him one more prove-it year? But you're still asking the same question a year from now. But maybe that's the best way to go. Just get one more year out of him, set up for a replacement, and pair him with CeeDee Lamb and go from there.
Yeah.
Or if it works, great, and you're like, yeah, of course we want to roll with this. Then if you have Pickens and Lamb, going forward here, you're rivaling the Bengals in Chase and Higgins as, you know, the best duo in the league.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of the George Pickens thing that would say the sensible thing to do would be to franchise tag him and just, you know, play out the short term and hope, you know, and if it blows up, you're able to get out from it. And if it doesn't blow up, then all they did is make the price go up and delay it for a year. So it's sort of fairly harmless. But that does hinge on how does George Pickens react to the franchise tag. And, you know, a lot of people do not like the franchise tag as a concept. George Pickens has been a fairly volatile person anyway. Do those two things mesh? If they don't, well, then that's a different conversation. But if they do, I think that's absolutely a thing Dallas could do. Other than the fact that some teams don't like having a guy play on the franchise tag because it's just a ton of guaranteed money that hits the cap immediately, whereas long-term deals are much more team-friendly in year one in terms of the salary cap impact.
Right. So if you're set up enough in this year to, what was it, 25 or so for him?
The salary, the franchise tag number, it's 28, I think.
28.
Something like
I mean,
that.
yeah, if you can handle a 1-year guarantee like that, then yeah, you do that and you buy yourself some time. Other interesting names: Alec Pierce.
Well, everyone wants Alec Pierce.
I saw Brett Coleman say he's the guy that's like the all 32 teams are using him. The stat I put out yesterday on Pierce. Listen to this one. He is, over the last 2 years, 94th in the league with 84 receptions. Just 94th. Why is he high on these?
So that's like the high-end wide receiver 3 on an offense.
94th in receptions, including the playoffs. But he's 26th in receiving yards. 26th in receiving yards on being 94th in receptions.
Sorry, low-end wide receiver 3, not a high-end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a top 32 receiver
right,
in
but
yards.
Low-end wide receiver 1 in terms of yards.
Because he has led the league in yards per reception each of the last 2 years, and he's averaging a 1950s-like 21.8 yards per reception over the last 2 years. A QB-proof deep threat who has done this with Anthony Richardson, who was the backup 2 years ago, who kept coming into play for the Colts. Whether it's Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Riley Leonard, Phillip Rivers. I don't think Rivers hit him.
Old man Rivers?
On too many deep balls.
No.
And whoever was playing behind Richardson in 2024, doesn't matter. Alec Pierce has been a deep threat. So what do you do with a player like Pierce? Right? Where he's
Flacco?
Probably, what?
Flacco?
Yeah, Flacco for a couple plays, for a couple games.
Minshew
was the year before. Pierce wasn't doing this his first 2 years in the league, but the last two averaging almost 22 yards per reception. What do you do with a player like this in free agency?
Yeah, he has been. I mean, we joke every week there's a 50-yard bomb in there to Alec Pierce somewhere, and it's inevitable. It happens. It shows up every time, and he's been an incredible deep receiver. He's big, he's long, he's got the speed, he's got the ability to go up and get the ball as well. You know who else had a crazy high yard per reception figure for like the first few years of his career before becoming sort of much more well-rounded wide receiver?
Who?
Torrey Holt. Torrey Holt averaged like 19.5 yards
He did.
per
That's
reception
right.
in his career for like the first few years, and then suddenly it's like, actually, he's just become Isaac Bruce.
Right. That's a good drop right there. Because I forgot Holt, because the early Rams years, the greatest show on turf, Bruce was the high volume receiver.
Yeah.
Torrey Holt and Hakeem were both, and Hakeem played in the slot, but they were both vertical type threats. Huh?
Right.
Holt's first year was that Super Bowl year of 99. Dude, his second year, he had 82 catches at 19.9 per reception, led the league in receiving yards.
That's what I'm saying.
That's pretty legit.
Now, they're different types of receivers, but
Yeah.
but it's another guy that like was sort of, I don't know, not
And Holt's
was
a
more,
fringe Hall of Famer. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I mean, Holt's the guy where people forget about it because his career, I think, was relatively short compared to some of these other guys. But, like, he was the guy where all these stats you see now, like, for the first 6 years of his career, like, Jefferson's having all these at the moment. Like, no receiver's ever done this over the first X years of their career. Like, Holt had the best 6-year start to his career of any receiver in NFL history, effectively. And then it was like him and Randy Moss for a period of time. And then Randy Moss kept going for longer, whereas Holt kind of stalled out and then retired relatively early. But there was a 6 or like Sando does this, I think, when he does his Hall of Fame stuff. He looks at like best 6-year periods of players. Like Holt has a peak, if you like. Holt's sort of 6-year run it's up there with anybody.
You got me down this rabbit hole. Like if you compare, because Evans is going to be, Mike Evans might be a Hall of Famer on the back of 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, but one was 1,001, 1,004, 1,006, 1,035, 1,051.
And they were feeding it to him, but to get him some of those ones as well.
But Holt has, 1,600 and 13. And look, Evans has some of those big seasons too, but Holt's peak, 1,600, 13, 1,696, 13. That peak is truly unbelievable. Alec Pierce is not as good as Torrey Holt, though. So just to make sure we're not. We're comparing, not equating.
But he is interesting. He is interesting in that he's the guy that everybody wants this offseason. Like everyone wants Alec Pierce added to their offense, and the question is, what kind of money is that going to create?
Yeah, and look, if you're going to pay big money, or if the Colts are going to tag him, remember, any of these players are tag candidates here to just remain for a season. Do you say, hey, we want him to be just a vertical threat with he's got great size, speed, and ball skills? Right, that's why he's averaging almost 22 yards per catch over the last 2 years. Size, speed, ball skills. Is that what you're trying to add to your offense? Or are you saying, hey, we're going to pay $20 million a year plus to have a more of an all-around receiver? Because I don't think he's wide receiver one material necessarily. So that's going to be the tricky part, what you're paying for versus what you expect to get with an Alec Pierce.
The other reason I bring up Torrey Holt is earlier in his career, he was this deep threat, incredibly dangerous receiver, is that Pierce was not necessarily pegged as being that kind of guy coming into the NFL. Now, he was a deep threat at Cincinnati, and that was always going to be part, but maybe this is just, hey, he's a white guy.
I think he was pegged. He should have been pegged as that. He was a vertical threat.
But if you read like his draft profiles and stuff, people were talking about, he could be he could move the chains, like he could be a possession guy. He could work underneath and challenge these bigger, slower corners because he's shifty and quick and blah, blah, blah. And he'll make some plays deep, but he's become this like totally one-dimensional deep threat that's just inevitable and unstoppable. I wonder if there is still another layer to his game to be unlocked. Because year one, right, he struggled in everything. Then he was unlocked as this deep threat. Is there another door to be unlocked where he becomes an even more well-rounded and dangerous receiver?
A couple other interesting wide receiver names. Juwan Jennings from the San Francisco 49ers. He was almost lost in this loaded group of playmakers for a few years, and then it's like, why do they keep targeting Juwan Jennings? Because he's good and dependable. Remember, he was a 7th rounder who ran a 4.72, but he's 6'3", unbelievable in uncontested catches, and third in Juwan, right? Third down,
right?
Dependable, move the chains receiver. His best season was 2024. But he also had 9 touchdowns just last year. He's been a very good receiver, but similar to some of these other guys, he's always been a part of a bigger group.
Yeah.
So how much is that working in his favor? And then you ask, hey, how much can he handle the full workload depending on what you want to put on his plate?
And coming out of that Shanahan offense, as is the case with most of those guys, one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL. So Juwan Jennings is perfect in terms of, I think, projecting him forward to a bigger role in a different offense is almost a slam dunk guarantee that he's going to be a good player. So I think he's a classic free agent candidate where I would absolutely be trying to target Juwan Jennings if I was in need of receiver help.
How about Wan'Dale Robinson? He's coming off of career highs in everything.
Yep.
He's averaging 9.2 yards per reception, right? He was the guy that would have those games that, 9 catches for 30 yards for a few years, right? He was one of those PPR superstars where people are like, dude, how does he has so many catches but no actual production? And then all of a sudden last year,
they just start firing it deep to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's running seam routes and he's more than just this slot underneath receiver. Last year, even Russ was chucking seam routes to him and having success. So only 25 years old, former second rounder, Wan'Dale Robinson maybe showed he could be a little bit more last year, but it is the same question as Pickens and as Kyle Pitts, who we'll talk about. The contract year player, what do you do with that?
Yeah, 5'8", 185-pound deep threat last year. His average depth of target almost doubled from what it was previously. but it's not like he didn't go from being this it's a little bit like Jalen Waddle in Miami. Remember, like the beginning of his career, it was almost farcical that everything he was doing was just a short, crossing route over the middle, and he had like 50 of them in a game. And then suddenly they were like, what if we actually used him more deep? And turns out he's good at that as well. And it's not like you took away the other stuff entirely, but it did just remind you that actually this guy can do a lot more than you're currently pegging him with. I feel like that for Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, it's not like they took away all the underneath, short, blah, blah, blah. They just sort of reminded themselves that, you know what, if you line him up in the slot and you don't put a guy in tight press coverage, like, he can run vertically and make those plays as well. So he's probably just a more versatile, more dangerous offense across the board than, than he was given credit for.
We haven't even talked Rashid Shaheed.
Yes.
So Seahawks, I don't want to say Super Bowl hero, but, Super Bowl champion, Rashid Shaheed. We've talked about him a ton on the show through the years, joked about him is he the best receiver in the NFL? Dude's always behind the defense. He is the perfect Steve receiver here. Perfect guy for me. Deep threat, so fast, plays fast, behind the defense 2 to 3 times per game. Plus you have the special teams impact, one of the best punt return averages of all time. He's right up there. And he made some incredible special teams plays for the Seahawks this year. I'm usually not a special teams guy, as we know. That's an added bonus for Shaheed. And for some teams, like early in his career, that was the thing. That was what got him onto the field. And then before you know it, it's like 10 to 15 snaps a game. You give him at receiver, and it's like, dude can create a 50-yarder like an Alec Pierce seemingly once a week. So what do you do? Again, similar question with Rashid Shaheed. It's, on a first contract or a reasonable second contract, it's like, all right, that makes a lot of sense. Is he a true number 2? Like, none of these guys are number 1s besides Pickett's, potentially. Right. None of these guys are number 1 receiver types. But the question when you're looking at a number 2, can you pay Alec Pierce number 2 money? Can you pay Wan'Dale Robinson number 2 money? Can you pay Rashid Shaheed number 2 money? Because he's not as polished attacking all levels of the field, but his speed, quickness, deep threat, and special teams value does make Rashid Shaheed an excellent player.
Special teams value is a big part of that. Well, not a big part. It's a part of that as well. We've always loved Rashid Shaheed. I think absolutely. Like, a list of guys that I would be interested in adding to my team if I was in need of receiver help, right? We already talked about Wan'Dale Robinson, Juwan Jennings, Alec Pierce. Everybody wants to throw into that bucket. Rashid Shaheed. Romeo Doubs is going to be an interesting name in Green Bay. A lot of people, I think, are projecting him to be a better receiver outside of Green Bay, and whether it's almost that lack of a number 1 and the sharing of the football thing has been detrimental to Romeo Doubs, and actually he could step up and be that guy. But he's definitely, even if he just is what he is in Green Bay, he's still a good receiver to add to your group. That group, and then obviously your guy, the great Tim Patrick.
Yes.
That group, though, that's just a really good group of receivers. Different styles of receiver, different strengths and weaknesses, but I would want all those guys on my roster.
Who'd you mention before Dobbs?
Juwan Jennings, Alec Pierce, Rashid Shaheed, Dobbs, Wan'Dale, the guys we talked about.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Add Dobbs to that list like you did.
Jalen Naylor's kind of interesting as well in Minnesota.
Same. For me, he's, again, like they had Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, and then they had these games where it's like, oh, it's Jalen Naylor with 2 touchdowns or Jalen Naylor behind the defense.
Basically, the moment you gave him credit for that, he ended up dropping a critical ball. But for a lot of the games this season, despite the fact that their receiving core looked spectacular outside of Jalen Naylor, he was the one guy that wasn't letting 9 down. Jefferson wasn't making the plays that Jefferson has typically made. Jordan Addison was dropping critical passes. The only guy that was actually showing up for the quarterback was Jalen Naylor.
The other name to mention here is Deebo Samuel. Commanders get 1 year out of him. career low. They used him differently. Career low yards per reception. Career low, I believe, average depth of target. Used him as more of an exclusive slot last year where he had moved around a little bit with the Niners. A bit of a disappointment. Now he's 30.
Yeah.
He was never a great pure receiver because he had that versatility. He had that incredible.
That's a hard 30. That's a car that's been driven.
That's what hard. I mean. He's like a third of his career, he's been a running back.
It's like 100,000 miles is different depending on whether it's a guy, an old lady that's just driven it to church back and forth, or a guy that's like raced it.
Are they highway miles? Or
right.
They, start and stop?
This is somebody that's like Debo is like he's like one of those JDM, Subaru Imprezas that somebody's like souped up and taking street racing every night. The 80,000 miles it's a different 80,000 for him.
And he just gets further and further removed. I mean, the 2021 season was his best year, 18 yards per reception, 1,400 yards as a receiver. And that was when he started to, 365 yards on the ground. And he was, taking carries in 21, 22, 23, 24 with the Niners in more of a running back type of role. He's just further and further removed from his prime.
Yeah.
And I think that's the risk with the Deebo Samuel. So it's a challenge as a football fan when you see a name that, just 2 or 3 years ago was a household name, and then they're just not the same player. So I'd be a little worrisome about bringing Deebo in and what you're trying to do. And look, I liked all that said. You could be like Steve last year. You said, I like it as a buy low. Mm-hmm. Just didn't work out.
Your defensive lineman that you love that just somehow cling on to rosters for 10 years, just keep on trucking. Fair play to Laquan Treadwell for still
going,
still around. Now, primarily because he's a useful special teams guy, but former first round bust / disaster Laquan Treadwell is somehow still clinging on to NFL rosters year after year, primarily as a special teams guy. Like that's grinding out he's the guy from Rounders. What's his name? The guy, the workhorse, the guy that's just out there grinding every day instead of actually shooting for the big time.
Good for Laquan.
What's that guy's name?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, damn it.
Let's go tight ends.
Joey Knish. He's Joey Knish.
Yeah.
He's just out here grinding.
That's right.
For the paycheck.
And he's like a whole...
Got to feed the family.
He's a whole Twitter personality.
He is, yeah.
That's right. Tight end. We got some big names in the tight end group. Kyle Pitts, as he hits free agency here, coming off of a 5 touchdown
And again,
season.
some like big names in their prime, like the old school types of free agents. It's a bit like the draft, where it's a bit like this draft, where the old style, coming into their second contract, going to get the payday players are at the lower value positions. It's like running backs, tight ends. They're not it's not the superstar positions.
Pitts he looked very good last year for all of the questions that you had. Like, remember, he had a great rookie season, didn't find the end zone. Fantasy people hated that, but he moved around the formation. You saw a lot of the skills that made him the number 4 overall pick. Tapered off for a couple of years, less consistent. I thought last year was his best all-around season. Career highs in receptions and touchdowns, and he's only 25 years old.
Yeah.
And again, you look at historic tight end.
Just 25. Like
what?
Only just 25.
And he's very young entering the league. This is why we have these discussions during draft time about youth, and that's why it's also, I think the youth factor is also, I think it's overrated sometimes for the drafting team, because like the Falcons aren't necessarily getting the benefit of drafting a young developmental player because they don't have him under contract going forward. They're not benefiting from, he might just be entering his prime right now. Instead, they got younger developmental years.
I haven't checked this, but there's probably going to be older players than Kyle Pitts in this draft class. Like Tyler Shuck is older than him from last year.
Akeem Mesidor's 25.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Miami.
I haven't checked the birth date, but there's probably older players than Kyle Pitts that are going to get drafted in a couple of months' time.
That's what we're talking about. Like Keldrick Falk is 20. Akeem Mesidor's 25.
Akeem Mesidor is...
And they're both going to be...
Younger than Pitts. But there's probably...
But they're close.
Yeah. But there's... I haven't... There's somewhere. I bet. I throw, a fake dollar on the table. There's probably a player older than Kyle Pitts in this draft class.
So what do you do with the Kyle Pitts? He's still not a great inline blocker. I don't think you need... The old plan and discussion for us was, hey, is he better as an X receiver? I think he can still do some X receiver type of stuff. You can move him around the formation. There was a smoothness to his game last year that I don't think he had previously. Because he'd have some clunky drops, but last year just felt like he was at the right place at the right time. He made the dependable plays, made some big time plays, and was just a better all around player than he was his previous 3.
This is very ephemeral and difficult, like nebulous. But last year was the first year it felt like Kyle Pitts was comfortable. Like it felt like the first year where he just knew what he was doing. He was out there and he was playing without thinking about everything, right? And that looked more like the college Kyle Pitts, where it was just fluid, it was natural. He was just playing with natural talent and playmaking instinct. And when he does that, he's insane because he's huge, fast, fluid, has some of the most natural like ball skills I've ever seen from a player at that position, where, the ball can be like a yard behind him and he just naturally reaches out, snags it, and it's not a problem. Last year was the first year where it looked like he wasn't just overthinking everything and getting tied up in paralyzed by processing.
All right, a couple other tight ends to discuss. Older tight ends. A guy named Travis Kelce, technically a free agent here. We'll see. I imagine it's Chiefs are retiring.
Kansas City or nothing. By the way, the Kyle Pitts thing, I'm still extremely excited by what his ceiling could be, but I've seen enough bad that I would be terrified of, paying him too much money. My approach to Kyle Pitts would be, I'm setting a dollar figure line in the sand like an auction.
If you're willing to take it, fine.
You're right. And if it goes above that, I'm pivoting my money to like David Njoku instead. You know what I mean?
We'll talk Njoku in a minute. Just to touch on Kelce really quick here, though. He's still third among tight ends with 173 receptions over the last 2 years. Yards per reception have gone way down. Hasn't looked nearly as nimble. I thought 24. He was pretty much catch and get tackled. Last year, a little bit more shifty after the catch. If Kelce comes back, what does he have left? At the very least, if it's for Kansas City, it's going to be for Kansas City.
Yes.
If he comes back, he's still, I know he had some key drops, and they probably got accentuated more because it was in key situations. It was against the Texans. It was when their season was on the line, or it was in the red zone. But usually catches the ball well, and he's just a good know where he's going to be option for Mahomes. If he retires, it's just another big hole that they need to fill. It's less of a hole than it was a couple years ago because, he's averaging under, he's averaging about 9 yards per reception, where his career average is 12. But it's just another replacement for Kansas City if he doesn't come back.
Yeah, he's still a useful player, but he's not the player that he used to be. And, it's kind of pointless talking about him in free agent lists on the basis that he's basically going back to the Chiefs or not playing.
We've done this free agency stuff for a while. And when you go through your research, you remember the year we were like, look, if this was 3 years ago, this guy would be great. The number of players where you say, 3 years ago was his best year. 2 years ago was his best year. That's David Njoku. And I know the quarterback situation's gotten worse. It's always been kind of bad at Cleveland, but his best seasons were 2022 and 23. So there are a number of players where I'm putting into my notes here, 2021, 22, 23, those were his best seasons. So Njoku, 9-year veteran, he's only averaging about 8 yards per reception over the last 2 years, hasn't been as efficient, as effective. So I don't know what you're getting out of him, but, at his best, good run the seam type of guy, dependable receiver, reasonable enough blocker. He's a good tight end, but I don't know if you're getting anything special from Njoku in free agency here.
Yeah, you definitely have to factor in what the quarterback situation has been like in Cleveland, which isn't helping. Now, Harold Fannin rocks up and he's making plays, and that's where the ball was going more than Njoku. So it doesn't explain all of it, but it's definitely a factor. Given Njoku, he's still the right side of 30, he's still talented, athletic. Again, if the money for Kyle Pitts gets crazy, David Njoku's the next place I'm throwing my money in free agency.
The other name I want to – Dallas Goedert
Yeah.
is a free agent. You see him getting a little bit older, tapering off, still good red zone weapon, still a reasonable player at this point in his career, not what he was 3 or 4 years ago like others. 2 Ravens tight ends, both drafted in the same year, hitting free agency, completely different players. Isaiah Likely, 2024 set all of his career highs. Last year played most of his snaps in the slot, so he's more of a moved tight end, good receiving weapon. And then Charlie Kohler is my sleeper tight end, as a Y tight end, as a guy that can inline block, handle defensive ends in the run game. Watch out for Kohler. He did some nice things. He hasn't been targeted much at all with the Ravens, but he's got speed. He ran in the 4.6s coming out of Iowa State. He's got some speed, And he can block. So we always get surprised by like the Charlie Warner deals and the Josh Oliver deals at tight end, these blocking tight ends. Keep an eye on Kohler.
I think the tight end market is getting interesting because you've got this shift back towards more tight end sets in the NFL generally. I mean, the Rams on their own are like propping up the market with their 13, 14 personnel systems. But does that massively increase the value of guys that can do everything again? Like, there's no player like this, but is a Gronk all of a sudden the target? Like, do you now want to be focusing on, let's find the guy that's a mismatch as a receiver and as a blocker at the same time, and suddenly that guy becomes like incredibly valuable because we're running way more tight end stuff? Or does it actually matter, and now you can have multiple different types of tight end on the field at the same time, right? So your move tight ends can still they become more valuable because we're just using more tight ends, and actually suddenly we can get more production out of these guys that are maybe limited because they're not particularly good blockers. And if that's the case...
So you're saying it kind of works both ways. Like, you need...
Right, well, I'm wondering where the market's going to take
this.
this.
You need your move tight end.
Right, I'm wondering where the market is going to take that. Because two guys that I think are quite similar and have been maybe seen as disappointing because their sort of talents feel like they should have been more productive than this. But Isaiah Likely, who you mentioned, and then Chigakonkwo from Tennessee, those guys are both like 6'4", 240, run fast, catch the ball well, et cetera, et cetera. And similarly, it feels like fantasy people every year, like, wait, here's the breakout for one of those guys. They're gonna take off. It's gonna go nuts. But I feel like they're always kind of held back by the fact that they are more limited than some of these other tight ends.
By the way, the top consensus tight end in the draft, Kenyon Sadiq, 6'4", 245, similar size, probably runs 4.55, 4.6. He's going to be a similar type of player where you're going to say, hey, Sadiq has some incredible inline run block reps where you see him just moving people, but size-wise, you're like, oh, he's a move tight end.
Yeah.
He's not an inline Y that's going to be blocking 270-pound defensive ends in the NFL. When you tight end evaluation, it's almost like when you talk to an evaluator, it's what can this guy do? He's a mismatch weapon. He's too fast for linebackers and too big for safeties, and you get those old cliches. But when you talk to coaches, they look at it through the prism of how am I going to call plays with this player? Does he allow me to call my full set of plays? Do I have to? Can he only play in 12 personnel as the second tight end?
That's the thing.
Right? That's the question. And I do believe with more 12 and 13 personnel, 2 and 3 tight end sets in the NFL, it brings some level of value to Isaiah Likely and Chigakonkwo, but I think it brings even more value to the blockers. It does bring more value to the tight ends, especially as teams are bringing sixth offensive linemen in. If you can get a tight end like a Charlie Kohler, who can actually block, and, oh, by the way, he can run the seam, which the offensive lineman can't do, the sixth O-lineman, those guys might have more value than they've had since, the 90s.
Yeah.
The way teams are playing right now is, with bigger sets. All right, let's go to O-line.
Just a few other names to throw in there.
You got more names. We're going to be here for 6 hours.
Tyler Higbee is one of those Rams tight ends hitting the open market. Cade Otton from Tampa Bay, who has been Baker's favorite target for various periods, but also another one of those guys that's been sort of emblematic of, if only they had a better tight end. Austin Hooper somehow still out here trucking for the Patriots. And then...
In yesterday's cut candidates, Hunter Henry was on the list. T.J. Hawkinson was on the list as potential cut candidates. There could be a lot of tight ends available.
And then former rapper Darren Waller had a
rapper sensation.
Gone injured, but when he wasn't injured, which is the story of his life, when he wasn't injured, did still look like he could bring juice.
He did. He did look. He was the most dependable receiver, right, for Tua for a while after Tyreek Hill went down. So yeah, the tight end market, and then I believe the most tight ends invited to the scouting combine in the last 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of starting caliber, or at least contributing caliber tight ends in the draft. It's a big tight end year compared to previous years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go offensive line, starting with offensive tackle. So you have names like, let's start with Rasheed Walker from the Green Bay Packers, 3-year starter. He's going to be an interesting one because they kept putting him out there. He's production-wise, he's been okay at best.
Yeah.
maybe average from a pass blocking standpoint. Definitely some games where he's overmatched. He's not great in the run game. And I think the tricky one here is like Green Bay's letting him hit the market. And then, but offensive linemen, this is, there's a lot of offensive linemen who had, say, below average to average production in their first 3 or 4 years who then become really good above average starters. This is a very Dan Moore type of player here, where I think Dan Moore was a below average player, hits the market, just made $20 million plus last year just because he's a starter. I don't know if I would do that, but you kind of get it, right? When this creep back toward average world, he'll at least be in that range.
And he's been really quite good as a pass blocker. So it's the run blocking is almost problematic levels, but the pass blocking has been really quite good, particularly for a guy that is, a former 7th round draft pick who, is still pretty young in terms of development and age. Like, there are reasons to talk yourself into Rasheed Walker, being a pretty good bet going forward. Again, particularly if you've just had a disaster at left tackle for a period of time.
Isn't that a good example of how draft capital or draft position stays with you? Like if Walker was a first rounder or second rounder and had that level of production, reasonable pass blocker, what have you, he probably gets signed, right? Same with Dan Moore. Like Dan Moore, not saying that they've been great, but just going out there and like if you're just a first or second round offensive tackle and you just start for 4 years and you're not awful, neither player was awful, you're probably getting re-signed, right?
Yeah.
Instead, they hit the market.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see how many teams off the top of your head are like screaming out for, like, we just need a left tackle.
So the Bears are in an interesting spot just because their left tackle just got hurt.
Yeah,
and their other left tackle is hitting free agents.
The Browns' entire offensive line is free agents, so
the Browns
need everything.
Everything. Who else actually needs? All the Chargers needs are, they're
like
more
there's a few teams,
based.
there's a few teams with question marks or young players, like either an injured guy coming back or a young player that is expecting to take a year or a step forward. There's not that many teams you look at.
Panthers might need a left tackle,
right, because of the injury
with Icky.
But you look at it, there's not that many teams who are like, we literally just have nothing at this spot and need a player.
No, you're right. There's really not, especially not at left tackle.
That's what I'm saying, like specifically left tackle. Now maybe if you want to flip him over to the right side, et cetera, but the left tackle, there might actually not be that good a market for them at the moment.
All right, who else we have for? Where's my list here?
Ton of right tackles.
Who you got?
Braden Smith, Jermaine Illuminor are both free agents. I say a ton. I've got a couple written down. There's the connected with Rasheed Walker, I think, is the interesting one of Braxton Jones, who had been kind of in that same bucket of like solid but not that good.
5th rounder, Southern Utah, good for a 5th rounder, like a steal for a 5th rounder, but not enough that the Bears are like, of course we're going to keep him around. He's our guy, especially when Ben Johnson showed up.
But he's going to be interesting because like Dan Moore is maybe the better comp. A lot of the similar conversations where you're like, Dan Moore's not actually that bad. It's just every time he faces Myles Garrett, he looks like he doesn't belong in the NFL, right? But that's a Myles Garrett problem, not a Dan Moore problem, right? Almost everybody looks that way when they play Dan Moore or when they play Myles Garrett. Now, admittedly, Dan Moore looked particularly bad that way relative to even other people when he goes up against Myles Garrett. But the point is, overall, his baseline was kind of okay, and yet everyone, I think the NFL, or at least based off the evidence that Tennessee gave him money, the NFL seems to have sort of accepted that as an argument to make. Meanwhile, Braxton Jones, I think you could make a fairly similar case for, and yet the Bears were like, this guy can't play. We need to get rid of him all the way. Like they seem to be like constantly annoyed at the fact that they had to play Braxton Jones at left tackle and went out of their way to get him out of the lineup and upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. So does the rest of the NFL look at that in the same way they looked at Dan Jones and like, actually, or Dan Moore, and like, actually, this guy's not a bad player, or actually similar levels of play, for some reason we just hate Braxton Jones?
I think it's just the nature of, I mean, you mentioned Rasheed Walker. I think he definitely has some games where he's completely overpowered, doesn't handle, counters and stunts well. Like there are deficiencies in his game, but it's good for a 7th rounder. I think Braxton Jones, deficiencies in his game, he could be completely overpowered. He can, struggles with speed to power, and then good for a 5th rounder, right? Good for an FCS player, right? So it's relative there, and I think that's the decision teams have to make. Do you try to, when we talk about creep back toward average, that's the unit as a whole. There is value, as we saw years ago, having one elite tackle does help the entire unit quite a bit. And so I think that's where teams are trying to make those decisions. Braden Smith is the interesting one to me, coming off of injury. 3 straight years where he's been banged up. But at his best, former guard who can move people in the run game, good zone blocker, good pass blocker, a little bit of a regression the last couple seasons. And then Jermaine Illuminor, we talked about the Giants' offensive line was one of the worst in the league a couple years ago. Illuminor helped them creep back toward average, career low 19 pressures allowed last year.
Yeah.
Now, he did lead the league with 14 penalties, goes both ways. But he's become, heading into year 10, that guy, like in creep back toward average world, he could hold up at right tackle.
He was a solid player. Like, he's always been a kind of interesting guy. I think he's done well with his career.
The other name I wanted to mention was Elijah Wilkinson. He got thrown into the mix as the starter for the Falcons last year after Caleb McGarry got hurt. And he held up all right, career high in snaps, average in pass pro, 7th most pressures allowed, but part of that's just being on the field.
Yeah.
And for a zone scheme, he's more of like they ran their outside zone scheme in Atlanta last year. He's kind of undersized and fitting what they were doing, so he might be a scheme fit option at right tackle, or at least as a swing tackle.
For those teams that you mentioned earlier that may need a temporary left tackle, and the Carolina Panthers are the most obvious version of this, Josh Jones is a free agent again, and that man is a really good, serviceable left tackle. Apparently only left tackle, but still. Josh Jones going to the Carolina. Why has the doctor not made this move happen already? Get tampering. Doctor, get tampering right now, illegally, and get Josh Jones in the building. Josh Jones is a good left tackle if you need him to play for a while, and then you might need him to play for a while. So Josh Jones to the Carolina Panthers has to happen.
Jonah Williams might also be the one, like at the right price, I would look at. Cardinals right tackle. He hasn't played great, but I don't know if there's a buy low market for him. If I don't have to rely on him, maybe as a starter. The other name I wanted to mention, like Jack Conklin. So the entire Browns offensive line. We'll talk about their guards in a minute here because we're going to be here for 6 hours. But all my notes on every Browns offensive lineman was his best play was 3 years ago. His best play, he's far removed from it. I think Conklin.
Well, he's like.
There's a lot of offensive linemen who are aging well and might play into their mid-30s. I'm not seeing it from Conklin.
He might retire. Like, he's in bits. Yeah. He's not even 32 yet, but he's dealt with so many injuries in the last couple of years, including concussions, that like he might retire. And yet, if you could work a pathway back to him being, healthy and
he's
ready to go.
He's like 5 years removed from his best.
Sure, but his best is like, unlike any of these other guys, really, his best is like one of the better players of the position in the NFL. Like, if you and again, the fact that he's only 31 suggests that, like, offensive linemen are playing to like 40. If you could say, all right, it's been a rough few years, but we're going to, even if you give him some time, and said, let's work on this and let's get you on just a health pathway. I'm just saying, if you could imagine a world where he gets healthy, he's not at an age where you say, unless it's been like permanent debilitating injuries, right? Like, and I don't know how many of those even exist in today's world of medicine. But like, that guy is not old to the point where he shouldn't be able to play anymore. So if you could get him past the injuries,
I think he's done.
On the other hand, again, he's had so many of them that he might just go, you know what, I'm out of this. He
might be done.
That's what I'm saying. He might just up and retire.
Let's go into your offensive line, guards and centers. We're getting deep into the weeds here. More Browns.
All of them.
Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller.
Yep, both guards.
Center,
and
Ethan
center.
Pochich. All the Browns. And all of my notes. 2021 to 23 was their best play, or 20 to 23 was their best play. Now, did that coincide with Bill Callahan? I think in some cases, it was a little bit of a different scheme. They were running a little bit more gap scheme than zone. Like, it was a little bit different. But like Pochich in particular at center, best stretch of play was 22 to 24. He's injured, missed the end of last season.
Just a 30-second diversion here. You've repeatedly used you've summed up Andrew Berry's tenure as, outside of the worst personnel move in NFL history, he's been a pretty good GM. Would you at all reassess that statement in that all of a sudden the entire Cleveland offensive line is a free agent?
I would say
That doesn't feel like optimal team building.
I'd say this is all Deshaun Watson's fault.
Okay.
I think because they had no draft capital and no cap space, no room, no flexibility, this is the mess that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the Browns had a perennial top 5 offensive line, Kevin Zeitler, who's now 4 teams removed from playing with the Browns, Pocic, Bitonio. The only weakness was at left tackle because they missed on Jedrick Wills. But the other 4 were excellent with the Browns, with Conklin. They were good 3 years ago. But now, all of a sudden, they got older, and then now they're not worth the money. They couldn't keep that line together. They couldn't draft first-round replacement tackles because they didn't have first-rounders for 3 years. So, look, could they have done a better job? Could you say, hey, last year, maybe don't spend 2 of your top picks on running backs, 2 of your 6 picks or 7 picks or whatever they had on running backs? Yeah, you could say that. Maybe we could have anticipated this more.
Yeah.
But I know Browns fans, astute Browns fans, knew this was coming. They went from 3-4 years of dependable offensive line play, and then all their contracts were coming up at the same time, and they couldn't really do much because they were hamstrung by the Watson thing. And they got the defense great, but this was when you're whack-a-mole around the roster here, something's got to give, and what's given is the offensive line and the receivers. So I'm not saying Andrew Berry's executive of the year or anything. I'm just saying the one awful Deshaun Watson move is
perfect.
a big part of the reason why they have 3 offensive linemen under contract, and they might not all actually be starters, and they need 5 new starters essentially.
It's perfect. It's like a permanent cheat code to anything that went wrong. It was that
Watson's fault.
It was the Deshaun Watson deal, and and we've already agreed that was somebody else's fault. So everything from that moment on is not my fault because I'm hamstrung by this deal.
Watson's fault. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. So here they are. So Bitonio, look. When we go through free agency every year, there's 2 ways of looking at it. You could say this guy's a long-term answer, or this guy's in his mid-30s. Give me a year or 2 out of him. If you're looking for a guard, I think Joel Bitonio is still hanging on as a starter.
Yep.
34 years old. Kevin Zeitler, former teammate, he's now played. He's looking for his 4th team in 5 years.
Yeah.
Or 5th team in 5 years potentially, and he's played over 900 snaps in 11 straight seasons. I was surprised because last year at this time he was a free agent, and we thought if you're a Super Bowl contender, if you're a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, you plop Zeitler right in there at right guard, and you're feeling good about it, and you just he might even be your best lineman or he'll be very good. And Tennessee is the team that takes Zeitler, and he has a decent season, and he's fine. He's still productive. He's still a good player. So I think Zeitler, same thing I said last year. If you're the Chargers, just grab Zeitler for a year, maybe 2. If you're the Chargers, just you know what you're going to get. It's not going to be a ton of money, right? You have other holes to fill. Just grab Zeitler. He's going to be good until he proves that he's not going to be. Wyatt Teller's a little bit different. Like his production has dropped off. Left guard in Cleveland,
significant,
or right guard in Cleveland. I'm sorry. His production has dropped off. I was looking at him too. Again, they were more gap-heavy scheme. I do wonder if that's more his skill set. They've been back and forth, but hasn't looked as good the last couple of years. But at his best, he was one of the best power blocking right tackles in the right guards in the league. Pretty good pass protector. He just hasn't played his best football in a few years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's, I think, the biggest X factor name in the interior offensive line market is Elijah Vera Tucker because he didn't play all last year, so he's sort of out of sight, out of mind. But at one point, he was looked at as one of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL, a guy that could play tackle in a pinch as well. And I think it was a torn triceps that kept him out of all last season. He's also got a fairly extensive and concerning injury history dating back to college. Like you put his college and NFL careers together, it's like that guy's missed some pretty significant time. But in terms of right age, right talent, he should get a ton of money if teams are happy with the medical part.
Producer Will suggested, as we put our notes together, that this might be a 2-part episode, offense and defense.
He's learned. He understands.
I said, nah, we'll be good. I didn't learn. I said, nah, we got this.
You've been doing this for like 12 years, and you haven't learned. He's been doing it for a year or two, and he understands.
Like we should just finish the offense and come back tomorrow and do the defense at this point. Are we just going to grind?
Kids are quiet at the moment. I think now.
Yeah, one of the iPads is going to run out of juice.
That's not ideal.
They're on to the 2022 AFC Championship right now.
Sure.
That they're watching, or 21.
I don't think either of them are actually watching that though.
The
point is they're quiet, so we should be, getting on.
My sleeper guard, Isaac Seumalo, 4 straight plus seasons. I don't know what I wrote.
Free agent again.
Yeah. I don't know what this note is. Missed 7 games over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I said most 7 games. Good job fixing that, though, in the notes there.
Tevin Jenkins is another player that I'd be pretty interested in. Again,
Always.
Another guy that's had a lot. I'm turning into you, gravitating to the guys that are always injured, but when they're not injured, play really well. Tevin Jenkins is a good player who's been injured quite a lot, and I would kick the tires on
Now,
him.
you've learned. Dalton, in every year there are players where some of the advanced production numbers look pretty good, and the NFL's like a little bit, I don't know, on this guy. Tevin Jenkins is one. Dalton Reisner, like it's taken him time to get settled with teams, or teams move on from him, but he just played with the Bengals last year, and he had a career low 17 pressures allowed for Reisner. So every year there are starting guards available.
Sure.
David Edwards is going to be one of the bigger names, a multi-year starter for the Bills, coming off a couple of really good years as well. And the Bills are a big question because they have left guard David Edwards and center Connor McGovern, both hitting free agency. So seeing what they do there, if they could retain one or both, or if they end up having to go somewhere else. It's going to be one of the stories here because Buffalo has had, when was the last time they've had the same offensive line for like 4 years now, since they drafted Osiris Torrance.
Yeah.
It's been the same group. Underrated story in Buffalo is the continuity of the starting 5. This is the first time that would be upset in, I think, 4 years in Buffalo.
And then speaking of center, one of the prizes of free agency is Tyler Linderbaum.
We're setting it up. Tyler Linderbaum, how did we get here? Former first-round pick, loved him as a first-round pick. Remember, they had 2 first-rounders. They got Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum in that 2022 season. When we talked about cut candidates yesterday, we discussed the franchise tag and how it is applied to the entire offensive line. Had they tagged Linderbaum, it would have been a massive amount of money because his tag numbers coming against tackles and guards and these big name players.
By the way, Ben pointed out to me this morning, we were sort of so focused on the Renner aspect of, this is broken, this is stupid, and and how the NFLPA then gets rickrolled in every negotiation because they're trying to tie down 58 million things and all the disparate interests. Ben Stockwell pointed out to me that actually it's not in their interest to fix that. Like that actually helps the players because either if somebody is crazy enough to tag a center or a guard at the tackle number effectively, that's good.
It is more money, right.
And then number 2, when that doesn't happen, like in Tyler Linderbaum's case, he's going to hit free agency and make more money. So in either way, the players actually win in this scenario. It's not in their interest at all to try and fix this. It's stupid, and the only interest in fixing it would be this is nipping at the back of my OCD brain. And that's annoying, but actually, for our purposes, this is a good thing.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. So, but that's led Linderbaum to maybe hitting the market, and then you have John Harbaugh leaves. Does that affect anything with Baltimore? There was an assumption coming into the season that they'll work it out, right? They will find a long-term center deal that just makes sense for Tyler Linderbaum in the Ravens, but
they may still do.
Which they, of course, any of these players, they still could do it.
Right.
They could tag him if they wanted to.
I think it's more likely that they sign him to a long-term deal than they tag him.
Yes, exactly. I completely agree. But what is Linderbaum? Remember coming out, he was this, I don't want to say undersized because he's over 300 pounds, but on the lower end of size for NFL centers. I don't think he was just a zone blocking center, but that was his specialty. That he's still unbelievable at movement, playing in space. He can pull. He can do a lot of different things. He's better in the run game than he is as a pass protector. As a center, he will get overpowered at times with his size, but he's one of the league's best. And the center, Tyler Linderbaum, one of the stars of free agency here this year.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the interesting aspects of him is that as much as
Playmaking center, by the way, is what I've called him.
yeah, as much as like you watch all these old drafts, right? There
do.
was a time where if you were running a gap scheme versus an Alex Gibbs like zone scheme, like the player you're looking for those schemes are so completely radically different. They're almost like different positions, right? They would be potentially different positions in today's NFL. The kind of muddying of the waters between schemes in the last 20, 30 years has been so complete that most teams are looking for mostly the same players. Like it's not the same level of these teams are looking for these players, these teams are looking for these players, and they're not crossing over, right? And if you have to change scheme or change coach, like you got to blow everything up because most of the players on your roster no longer fit. That doesn't really happen anymore. So like what I'm saying is there was a time where Tyler Linderbaum might not fit a particular scheme. Now he fits pretty much every scheme, but that's not to say that he mightn't have been in the best scheme for him to look his best in Baltimore over the first contract of his career. And if you put him on a different team, we might not have seen the best of Tyler Linderbaum simply by changing the scheme that he's in. Like I think it's entirely plausible that if you put him on a Shanahan type of offensive line, he would look like an absolute superstar.
Superstar, yeah. I hear you. I mean, I at the time it was like, oh, he might not be a good fit for Baltimore. They're running more gap and this and that.
And he's been good.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that hasn't still depressed how good he could look.
But my answer, I think it was actually proven right, that they could change. They had more versatility with their run game because of Linderbaum, and he could do the other stuff that they needed to do anyway. So I think he's a very good player and potentially hitting the market here. Connor McGovern, who I mentioned from the Bills, he hits the market. One of those guys, 1,000 snaps for 4 straight years, above average player. I think Buffalo would want him back. You don't want to mess things up too much up front if you're Buffalo. Maybe even him over Edwards. I don't know where they would value those two players, but just keep an eye on McGovern for teams that might need a starting center or for Buffalo trying to retain him.
I would love to see Linderbaum in Seattle.
Oh, boy.
They have a ton of money. The Darnold things worked out their way. They all those stats of, hey, the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, and they've got some of the best cap situation in the NFL for years to come. The interior of that offensive line is still a relative weakness.
The Max Unger move.
Right. Admittedly,
post-Super Bowls, they go get Max Unger from the Saints.
Admittedly, it was more guard, one guard spot than center, but
the
still.
other way.
Linderbaum would massively upgrade that offensive line. I think it would be a more natural schematic fit, albeit, Kubiak's leaving town. They've got to figure out exactly what their scheme is going to be next year. But I think that would look awesome.
I ruined that was a great social clip, and I think I screwed up the Max Unger thing. I think he went the other way, right? Seattle to the Saints.
Yeah, Seattle drafted him, didn't they?
Yeah, my bad. To the Wills, I just screwed up here. That would have been perfect. Super Bowl champs. They got a great free agent. They're going to go get the star center in Tyler Linderbaum.
Dude, just throwing him into Google, add his name to the list of offensive linemen that suddenly look
skinny now.
Yeah, like freakishly so.
My bad. I messed up the whole thing. All right, you ready to go defense?
Yeah.
Edge rush. Let's start on the edge. Trey Hendrickson. Do I have to do?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's do it right now. Quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance before we get to the defense. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage. When Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They didn't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors. After a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or to lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You can get started today at Root.com. Now to the defensive side of the ball. Starting on the edge, Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
Hitting free agency for the Cincinnati Bengals.
That's going to be an interesting one in terms of how much money he gets because on the one hand, he's kind of the same age as, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett-ish, the best defensive edge or edge rushers in the NFL. On the other hand, suddenly you're like, how much money do I want to give a 31-year-old who'll be 32 this season? And, it's going to be, I don't know, it's a tough market.
Coming off an injury, what do you have, core surgery or whatever it was here?
Yeah.
And
Now, I think you got to ask yourself how much of that was like, look.
I'm not fighting through this thing.
Yeah. I might have gone through that in the past, but if you're going to jerk me around the way you did this offseason, then you know what, I'm just going to go get the surgery.
Right. So he is 32. In his last 4 full seasons, though, averaging about 17 sacks.
Basically been the second best edge rusher in the NFL behind Myles Garrett.
Over 80 pressures.
And not far behind Myles Garrett.
And a reminder to our astute listeners and viewers here, when you're evaluating, we talk a lot about left tackle, historic left tackle and right tackle, and how it's harder to play left tackle, and I've tried to debunk that for 15 years now. It is actually harder to rush against left tackles because most of the best pass protectors are still put there. Hendrickson has been a defensive right end going up against left tackles, the best left tackles in the NFL, and put up those types of numbers. Same thing with Garrett, right, which is different. Not to take anything away from Micah Parsons and T.J. Watt and Khalil Mack and Von Miller back, in his days with the Broncos. But those guys rushed from the left side more often. They usually got the lesser pass blocker because the NFL, that's where they put those guys. So it's almost more impressive what Hendrickson has done. And even, the last time we saw him for a full season, the Bengals had no other pass rushers. There was no help. He was the only guy. And he'd be calling, if they had a lead late, he'd be calling game with a sack. And so he is incredible. He has been an incredible player for the Cincinnati Bengals. There's still an opportunity for them to maybe tag and trade and work some things out here. But if Hendrickson hits the market and teams are debating a 3-year deal at age 32, even if there's some regression in there, is that worth it?
Yeah,
with how good he's been.
He's been a spectacular pass rusher in the last 4 or 5 years. Like, again, over a significant period of time. You're talking about arguably the second best pass rusher in football behind Myles Garrett. And that's worth, theoretically, that should be worth giving monster money to. Like, absolute top of the market money. Not quite Myles Garrett money, but next tier down. But do you want to commit that kind of money to a guy who's 31 coming off an injury? That's going to be interesting. But teams that don't have pass rush, like teams that are in need of a serious upgrade, they should be throwing money around at Trey Hendrickson. Like this, remember last year, it was like Milton Williams, those guys are going to get paid tons of money because there's not that many players you can throw the money to, right? The cap keeps going up. The free agent pool is not what it used to be. You're not getting the sort of true uber superstar players that are 25, or if they are, there are positions that are not getting paid. So the money has to go somewhere. So either the middle class market across the board just goes up and all the, the Juwan Jennings of the world get paid a ton of money relative to what they quote unquote should be getting, or you decide that a guy like Trey Hendrickson is worth the gamble and he gets paid, he gets the bag anyway and just gets a ton of cash.
Surprisingly, did I misspeak that the Bengals cannot tag him? Mohal correcting me here. Part of the restructured contract that they had. He's going to be out there, I believe.
I don't think, wasn't that part of the thing, is that he didn't actually get anything useful out of that concession?
I'm misremembering. And then I just did a Bengals show the other day, and I can't remember if our friend Paul Daner brought it up or if I heard it from someone else, the idea of the tagger trade. Anyway.
I thought part of that, because I remember he basically held out, did play hardball with them, and then when they re-signed, it's like he got nothing out of that.
Yeah.
I seem to, maybe I'm misremembering, but I didn't think he got that. I thought part of the ridiculous part of that contract is that he didn't even get a no-tag deal.
So assuming Hendrickson's on the market, he's I still think he's the prize. The tricky part here is this is where elite pass rushers, especially every down pass rushers, would regress.
Yeah, I'm right. He didn't get a no-tag calls.
Yeah, so they could do it. This is where they tend to regress a little bit. How much of this past year's injury was real? Don't forget, he also had less wear and tear early in his career just because he was part of just a rotation with the Saints. It's not like he's an 8-year starter. He's more of like a 4-year starter.
Yeah, he didn't play more than...
he wasn't starting with the Saints.
He didn't play more than 600 snaps until that second contract, until he became a Bengal in a season.
Anything else on Trey? Because there were some interesting pass rushers here.
Yeah, nothing more, nothing further.
Odafe Owe hits the market. Mm-hmm. 5 years, just got traded from the Ravens to the Chargers. Chargers had him for the second half of the year. Back-to-back 10-plus win sack seasons, and 53 pressures is what he's averaging over the last 3 years. He's been a good pass rusher. One of the questions coming out, elite athlete, sub 4.4, 40, and other movement skills, which are incredible.
At like 250, 260.
Had no sacks, though, at Penn State. But he's one of those guys, like, I don't put him in the low production bucket of Shamar Stewart and Tyree Wilson's career and Trayvon Walker, because he had advanced production, right? He had pass rush win rate. He had a decent PFF pass rush grade coming out. So I don't think Owe is like an athletic success story who's learned how to rush the passer. I think the sack totals finally caught up, especially these last 2 years. And he has spurts where he looks like an elite speed rusher. And so for teams that are desperate for pass rushers, I think Owe gets paid.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Again, the in their prime type of guys, I think Owe should get money. Jalen Phillips is an interesting guy as well, former first-round pick again, 6'5", 260 again, and made an instant impact when he arrived in Philadelphia when they traded for him this offseason. I think it was better for the Eagles than he was for the Dolphins, and that was true for every defensive lineman on the Dolphins. So I'm willing to put that, to put that down to something on the Dolphins being wrong.
The question for Phillips, 5 years in the league, 2 years of plus production by the Palazzolo value metric. He's only played 800 snaps twice.
Right.
And coming in, remember there were concussion questions. There were already injury concerns coming out of college, and he's been banged up 3 out of 5 years here so far. So that's the question on Phillips. I think when he's healthy, though, very good player.
And he is at least coming off a healthy season.
Right.
Like it's not one of those seasons where he was injured wasn't the most recent one.
Did you have someone else you were listing there?
No, Phillips was my guy for the moment.
Boye Mafe,
Yeah.
just playing out his string 4 years with Seattle. I don't think he's ever been a dominant player, but he's averaging 50 pressures over his last 3 years, about 5.5, 6 sacks. Explosive pass rusher. I think he's good as part of a rotation. I think the tricky part here, like I think I trust a guy like Owe a little bit more as the high end, with the high end money versus a Mafe, where I think Mafe is probably more of a number 2 pass rusher type. Kaylavon Chason, what do you do with him? He had 74 pressures last year with the Patriots. Do you know what that made up? 44% of his career total. And Chason, but this is 2 straight years of Chason looking different. With the Raiders in 2024, remember they needed him. They had him. He made some big plays with the Raiders in 24. Was a big time player for the Patriots this past year. Clearly a career high, but what do you do with it's essentially a 1 year wonder here heading into free agency? I think New England would love to have him back for the continuity and consistency, but I don't know if you're breaking the bank
right
off of the 1 year. Again, 44% of his career pressures came last year.
And, I mean, he still never graded particularly well at PFF. Like, he had a ton of opportunity last year. I mean, he had 500-plus pass rushing snaps. So I think – and as much as, look, he made a lot of plays. I'm not saying there weren't good plays in there. Like, there were some really good plays just from watching his games, watching him actually make plays during the game. But sometimes I think you kind of, again, the mental highlight reel, you kind of like, you remember those splash plays and you forget that the guy played a lot of football in order to get those plays.
I remember them. Beyond that, Joseph Asai hits free agency. I think he had a nice year with Hendrickson's injury and Shamar Stewart's injury, career highs in snaps and pressures. He's a third edge rusher for me, Asai. So if you're priced out of the market, I don't know if I'd go that route, but I think he's a good number 3. I think Arden Key is a good number 3. I think AJ Epinesa is a good 3/4. So it's unexciting beyond Hendrickson, maybe Jalen Phillips, maybe Odafe Owe. But I think a lot of these guys are good depth pieces for teams that, like, for Super Bowl caliber teams that are trying to roll 8 deep on the offensive defensive line. A lot of these players are good additions.
There's a lot of depth, or DPR, designated pass rusher type guys. Josh Uche is hitting free agency again. He still showed last year that he's got some juice with the Eagles last year. You got the Joey Bosa bubble wrap experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, Buffalo didn't learn the lesson, didn't bubble wrap him, then he tailed off towards the end of the year. But early in the year, he looked a lot more effective than he's been for a while. Khalil Mack, right, is hitting free agency. He's still able to play.
Because he took a pretty team-friendly deal with the Chargers last year. I don't know if that's just that's going to be his MO here. He's just going to go 18 to 20 million one-year deals with the Chargers and just have that comfort level. But if he's free, he's still a good player.
Mm-hmm. Back in the DPR bucket, Malcolm Kuntz is coming off a pretty rough year relative to what he'd been at the year before and where the expectations were. It's like, oh, Malcolm Kuntz is really becoming a force of this team, and then just last year, nothing. Like, it just didn't look like the same guy. I don't know what you do with that, but he's still only 27. He's shown he can get real pressure off the edge, 50-plus pressures the year the year before that. I'd at least be interested in looking at him.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good shout. Kuntz was, he was very good. Like the Raiders he outplayed Tyree Wilson playing opposite Max Crosby and looked very good there. So I think edge rusher has some, Jadeveon Clowney is going to get signed in August like he usually does. Kwity Paye is still a pretty good run defender, but underwhelming for a first rounder for the Colts. So he hits free agency again as a 3 or as a 4 and as a depth piece. I think there's a lot of those players available here.
And of course, the biggest name in all of free agency, Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck, is back on the market.
Yes. I think Jacksonville wants him back.
I mean, why wouldn't they?
You don't win the AFC South
without the Barbarian.
Without the Barbarian. Mm-hmm. The most important free agent signing. Get the Barbarian back.
They also need it. They need it for the hair, right? Like, remember when the Packers, like everyone in the Packers, Clay Matthews, they all had the long flowing locks, like all of them. The Jags with wing guard / winger, depending on who says it.
Yeah.
The Barbarian, Trevor Lawrence, of course. Like they need the locks.
They do. I'm going to end it there. Anything else for edge rushers?
No.
Interior defensive line, your defensive tackles. Let me just start with this. Calais Campbell. I just want to honor Calais Campbell.
38, is he?
For a minute. I think he's 40. He's listed at 40.
Really?
On over the cap. Has he officially said he's going to retire?
39 years old.
You haven't read my notes.
Is he coming back? The Zennial superstar still dominating into his 40s. So he's 39 years old right now. He will be 40, though, by the time the season rolls around, September the 1st.
It sounded like he was ready to wrap it up last year and retire and finish as a Cardinal, where it all started back in 2008. But just want to pour one out for Calais, just in case he retires.
It is remarkable that he's still good. I mean, not just still playing. That's doable for a lot of players. The fact that he's still good, despite, 4 teams in 4 years or whatever, but he's good at all of them. Like, he's been every defensive line he arrives at. It's like he upgrades it, makes it better, is one of their best players, and then just, moseys on to the next one.
Again, if I have Super Bowl aspirations and Calais Campbell still wants to play football, he's got a spot on my defensive line rotation.
Yeah.
He can still disrupt. He can still play.
I mean, every year in free agency, there is a category of free agents that are geriatric one-year rental players, but they're good. Like, they still, James Harrison for a while was this guy, right?
Yeah.
Bring in James Harrison. He's 38 years old, but 1 year he's still going to go out there, bury some poor guy on the line of scrimmage and make your defense better.
Run through someone's face.
Right. And I saw him wandering around the Super Bowl Radio Row. He looks like he could still do that. I'm just saying, there's those guys. I'm always willing to give those guys one more year of football.
So just wanted to mention Calais. I have no idea if he'll even be available here. Other defensive tackles, you have David Onyemata hits free agency again. And he was a free agent from the Saints. Falcons got him. 2 out of his 3 years in Atlanta have been very good. 25 pressures per season. He's a very good run defender. Got him as a plus run defender over these last couple of years. I think he's a good disruptive player for coming out of Atlanta, and he had a nice little run there. Sheldon Rankins. When you go back through Sheldon Rankins' career, the poor Bengals, man. He has had plus production in 5 of his last 6 years, except 2024 with Cincinnati. So he's had 5 different teams in 6 years. 550 plus snaps per season, plus production in 5 out of the 6 years. The only time he didn't produce was with the Bengals. So he was part of that fierce Texans defensive line, right? You always talk about Hunter and you talk about Will Anderson, but Rankins and Tim Settle, who you and I have both loved, like those are dudes I just want in my rotation. This is free agency is the time to get your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th defensive linemen. And if you get the right players, they're the type of players when you look back, you say, wow, Houston's defense was really good. And Sheldon, I don't even know how many sacks he had, but Sheldon Rankin's had 6 or 7 sacks. Or this other guy was really disruptive in addition to the stars. That is what is available here in free agency is these rotational players, but they're high-end rotational players. So I'd say Onyemata, closer to a starter, but in that vein. Sheldon Rankin's in that vein. And if he finds another team here, he's done it across multiple systems and been just a really dependable player outside of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good starting caliber rotational type players that you could get on the interior. DJ Reader is still a really good football player. Maybe, again, a little bit shy of it where he was at his best, but I would still want him on my defensive line. I think he can still make an impact.
I was looking through the data on Reader because my brain keeps saying nose tackle, right? Mm-hmm. And when he was playing nose tackle, he had those freaky plays with the Bengals where he was holding up against double teams and looked like he was in the Matrix, holding the point. But most of his time in Cincinnati, when he had his best seasons, he was playing a little bit more B gap and 3 technique and everything, and he played nose as well. But the Lions made him more of a pure nose tackle as a free agent. What wasn't producing as well, or not as dominant up front. But I still think he could play.
I feel like his best plays come from using his size and strength to penetrate as opposed to hold. Right?
Yeah.
It's actually ironic in that the skill set that makes people want to play him as a nose tackle and hey, 2 gap, hold the point, don't give ground. It's that's actually why it's impossible to stop him getting through a gap, right? Because if you're a 310-pound guard, you can't stop that dude if he's got a head of space and he's got a weak shoulder on you. You just don't have the strength to it. He's too strong.
Yeah.
He's coming right through that gap, and suddenly he's 5 yards deep in the backfield, blowing up the run that way. I feel like the way of actually getting the best play out of him is to just turn him loose and say, you're quick, get into the gap with your first step, and then there's not a guard in the NFL that's going to recover against that because you're too strong.
It's like what you described Kenneth Grant as last year.
Yeah.
When you're 330 pounds and you're actually better at penetrating
Turn
and disrupting than just holding the point. So DJ Reader could be a rejuvenation type of option here for some teams if you let him get after the penetrate a little bit more. Daquan Jones.
Yeah,
from the Bills plus pass rusher. I got him plus over the last 4 years. Using my own
via the PVM.
I'm using my own terminology now.
I see that.
You catching on here? Throwing it. Look at that plus pass rusher. It's in the notes, so you could just see it quickly. 519 snaps over the last 4 years. This one you're getting your 500 and 600 snap players here on the defensive line. I think this is. Remember what the Panthers did last year? I don't know if I love the actual players that they got, but the strategy of Turk Wharton, Pat Jones, Bobby Brown. I think a team can grab 2 or 3 of these defensive linemen and feel really good about their rotation. Maybe not the high-end players if you miss out on a Trey Hendrickson or you miss out on a Dafe Owe, but the rotational 500-600 snap players, I think, rich in free agency here.
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
D-line.
I think there's quite a lot of them. You've got, who else did I have on my list? John Franklin Myers is still a player that I would want in my defensive line. I think that guy can still be a significant part of a rotation, very disruptive player.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Sebastian Joseph Day from the Titans, similarities there. So I think it's a good group. It's a good group of players to Shelby Harris is still going at 35 years old.
Still pretty useful, although last year was a bit of a down year for him. That might be the beginning of the end, but, worth looking at.
And I mentioned Tim Settle. I think he's just another, when he's healthy.
Defensive line, interior defensive line might lead the league this year in terms of guys who are like, wow, he's still in the NFL?
Yeah.
Contavious Street is somehow still in the NFL. Like undersized, sort of boxy, stumpy guy that got kicked inside, suffered through a bunch of injuries, and somehow is still out there getting by.
How about Brent Urban? Mm-hmm. Still listed as a free agent at 35 years old. I've been mentioning 500 and 600 snap players. Like he's a 300 snap player perennially. That's what he does.
Dean Lowry somehow still out there getting by.
Now we're just going to play this game.
It's great. We could set up that new Twitter account that's out there. That guy rocks or whatever.
Oh, let's do that guy rocks with 35-year-old defensive linemen.
Yes. Just still out here cashing an NFL paycheck somehow.
All right, we're going to play this game. Brent Urban snap count since 2016.
No.
151, 123, 562, 245, 391, 160, 309, 309, 209, 295.
Imagine having like a decade of like 150 snap seasons.
You're the fifth. It's great.
I get 150 snaps a year, and that's it.
He hasn't even played 3,000 snaps in his career. 35 years old. 4th round pick out of Baltimore for Baltimore.
Let's go. Come on, we got 3 more positions to get through.
Do we?
Today.
You never know who's watching. We have someone that loves is looking for, if Harrison is here, wants the Jordan 33rd team long sleeve. Someone else asking for the green long sleeve. I'll make it happen.
Who was saying that?
Doesn't matter.
You keep saying that's happening. I think you're just making it up every time.
No. I got a real text.
You got a text or somebody looking for that shirt.
That's correct. That is correct. Looking for the shirt. I'll make it happen.
Wow.
For him. Friend of the show. All right, what are we on to? Linebacker now?
Yep.
Speaking of the old guys, Demario Davis, Levante David, Bobby Wagner, all those guys free agents.
Yep. It's a weird.
Bobby Wagner notes?
36-year-old, still very good. Yeah. What's interesting to me
could be interviewed on the show someday.
Maybe. He's certainly been asked to be interviewed on the show, and
I won't know what to ask him because I
bailed on
lost
us.
our questions from
That's
6
true.
years ago.
I think we deleted them on the basis that he didn't seem to show any indication showing up. He is still very good. He's definitely not what he used to be. He's an interesting player who kind of has almost retaught himself the game in a different way. Like you can't ask him to do the things that he used to be able to do because he's not able to do it. And every now and again, you find him in one of those assignments, and it's like, man, that's ugly. Like it looks like the one-on-one reps of the Senior Bowl, the running back linebacker ones that most years are like game over for linebackers. It's just a no-win situation. You're put out in an island with a two-way go against an athlete, and you're like, you've got no shot. Every now and again, Bobby Wagner finds himself in one of those situations where he's like matched up one-on-one with like a Christian McCaffrey, in space, in coverage.
But then you see an athletic year 3 linebacker matched up with McCaffrey and Gibbs.
But my point is, Bobby Wagner used to be able to, right? And now it's like he really can't do that stuff anymore. But either him or his teams or a combination of both of them have understood what he can do, and he's still really good if you just don't ask him to do the stuff that he can't really do anymore.
So, yeah, I get it. And he's been a big part of Washington, going to the NFC Championship in 2024, the veteran edition for Washington. I still think he could be a rent player.
I mean, what's
for
interesting
a year.
to me about it, you've got Bobby Wagner and
Demario Davis, Levante David.
Levante David. 2 guys who have basically been contemporaries throughout their NFL
Class
career.
of 2012.
Both spectacular players, both elite-level linebackers, both still playing really good football. And one of them has become, the one-year rental guy, the 4 teams in 4 years type of guy, like the Calais Campbell of the world. And the other guy is doing the other way of doing it, which is even if you're going to be on the 1-year contract, just keep staying in the same place. Like, just never leave the Bucs every year, threaten it or pretend, and maybe you'll go. And then you just re-sign for 1 year, $10 million or whatever.
It is interesting difference. I apologize too, by the way. Demario Davis also in that 2012
was he really
draft class?
Same class.
So
I didn't know that.
Did Levante go in the first? No, him and Wagner were both in the second round. Demario Davis was in the 3rd round. Now the difference in his career is his career didn't take off until like year 5 or 6.
Right.
Demario Davis, and then
he wasn't great
7 or
until
8
he
years. He's been one of the best linebackers in the league.
Yeah, he wasn't great basically until he got to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And then he's been incredible from that
He's
point
been
on.
outstanding. So I think all of those guys.
I didn't realize he was in the same draft class. And then you also have whatever draft class the Devin Bush, the Devin White draft class was, where Devin White has consistently been pretty awful. But Devin Bush is randomly coming off a really good year.
So
his first in the NFL, basically.
Scares me about Devin Bush, and he would be on my buyer beware list.
Right.
I liked him coming out. Fantastic season last year. It was like one of the first times you've seen all of his athleticism at play and just everything.
And actually, the year before that wasn't bad either. Just as
he's been much better in Cleveland.
He wasn't the full-time starter at that point.
It reminds me of the Devondre Campbell. Like, what do you do when a player's – because by all advanced metrics, Bush is an average to below average player his first 5 years in the league, much like a Devondre Campbell. And then Campbell has this one elite Pro Bowl season.
All pro Devondre Campbell.
Season. Zach Bond was different. Like he didn't play a whole lot with the Saints and then became an all-pro with the Eagles. But it wasn't like he had 4 years of subpar play and then it just switched. But that kind of scares me a little bit about Devin Bush. But he's been outstanding but last year in particular. But really the last 2 years with the Browns.
And I was like watching his tape to try and figure out like if they found some kind of like idiot-proof like position to put him in where suddenly he's just not
get ball.
Yeah, where like he's not exposed to any possible error that he could make that he's been making for the first 5 years of his career. It's like no, they're just letting him go out there and play, and he's making plays. He's instinctive. He's getting to the right place. Like maybe it is just a simplistic thing like that. Jim Schwartz Cleveland defense, which is not going to be there anymore. Like it was characterized by. It's not the most complex defense in the world. It's a sort of throwback where they're lining up with elite playmakers and just saying, we're going to out-execute you. Go make plays.
I think those are the tricky questions that a general manager has to ask. If a player looks completely different late in the middle of their career, say.
In one
system. Right? Remember the Jamie Collins thing? Remember the number of times that Jamie Collins tried to leave the Patriots?
Yeah.
And every time he left, he was terrible. But when he was with the Patriots, he was productive. And it's like, all right, he's just a one-system guy, right? Or whatever it was. So if Jim Schwartz does land somewhere, maybe all of a sudden Devin Bush becomes a good value play there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if I was Jim Schwartz, I'd be looking to bring him in because apparently he works in that system.
A couple other linebackers to mention. Alex Anzalone.
Yeah.
Get him up there.
Friend of the show, sort of.
Friend of the show. He was on the show. Lower it, Toby.
What on earth is that?
Volume. I'm running low on battery over there. Got to get through. Anzalone, plus coverage player over the last couple years with the Lions, plus coverage. Dependable in the run game, glorious hair.
Glorious hair.
Look at that. Get him in Jacksonville.
Oh, yes.
He replaces Devin Lloyd.
Yeah. Perfect. Done. Make it happen now.
He replaces Devin Lloyd. How is Devin Lloyd not in my notes, by the way?
That is an oversight.
Big oversight.
He's arguably
that was Claude's fault.
The top.
Claude got us to the baseline of players, and I didn't add.
You should
back in a couple positions.
You should clarify because there's people out there that get very upset by any use of AI. You were merely taking.
I didn't do it.
You were taking what was already prepared as a list and then just turning it into a spreadsheet using Claude.
Oh yeah. This was just.
You weren't asking Claude like who were free agents.
And to be clear, not me.
You already had a free agent list, and you were like, Claude, turn this into a usable format for me.
He might be using old Claude. New Claude would never do this.
No.
Doubt it.
Whatever super version Paris is using probably wouldn't do it.
Oh, definitely not. We should have Paris make our list. So, Anzalone could still play. I think he's perfect fit in Jacksonville. You get the Barbarian back.
Yes.
You got Trevor. I mean, it's just
how many players with that haircut could we have on this defense?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what we need.
Then it's like, think about the disguise in that defense.
Wow. I can't see for the.
Is it Anzalone? Is it the Barbarian? You don't know. You don't know where the blitz is coming from.
I actually really like this linebacker group. I think there's something for everybody. There's geriatrics who still play really well.
When you say geriatrics, unironically, it's great.
There's the reclamation Devin Bushes of the world. There's the second contract guys like Devin Lloyd, who has been really good for the last couple of years. Started his career with like a 4-game run where he looked like the best player from his draft class, and then that fell away for a while. Bit all over the place, but still has like spectacular athleticism, size, speed, everything you want, and quite a lot of good play under his belt. Alex Anzalone, as you mentioned. Alex Singleton in Denver, who's a great story, but also a pretty good player. Who else did I want to bring up? Leo Chenal is another one that a lot of people will like. He's been on that Kansas City defense, has been more of a spot player than an every down guy.
I like Chenal a lot.
But a guy that a lot of people, I think, are projecting for better things than he's been showing, than he's had a chance to show in Kansas City. And then similar vein, maybe, but also with injuries rolled in there, Nakobe Dean. Dude, that guy's just a baller. I don't care. I mean, injuries, that's scary, but he's just good.
Chenal and Dean, two really intriguing players. If you're looking for more of a long-term option, I'd look at those two players.
Yeah.
And then Caden Ellis needs to be mentioned from the Falcons. Last 3 years, played over 1,000 snaps, outstanding, elite blitzer, and he's been a big part. I know they didn't have a great pass rush in 24, but last year as the pass rush took off, better play up front, but also Ellis's work as a blitzer. Remember, I think it was 2 years ago, because they had nobody getting after the quarterback. They were using him on sim pressures and the whole deal, and his versatility, ability to cover, ability to get after the quarterback was a huge part of the Falcons' defense and their resurgence, and just surviving in 2024 when they had no pure pass rushers that year. So I like Caden Ellis quite a bit too. He's 31. His best year is coming these last 3 seasons here at linebacker.
Mm-hmm. Players that fall into the category of, that guy's still in the NFL. Deion Jones is still out there trucking. Remember when he was like the best linebacker in the NFL for a minute?
He was.
Yeah, hasn't been that way for a while. Zach Cunningham still out there kicking, apparently.
We didn't mention Devin Lloyd specifically. We need to.
We mentioned him a bit.
But he might be...
He's probably the top free agent linebacker.
He is. I think he is another one of those guys where I think he had some huge splash plays this year as well. It's linebacker's a tricky one because you don't want to lean on just splash plays and project that. And I think it's a weird spot because I feel like the NFL's been back and forth on how much they value Lloyd, or maybe it's maybe not as much as the splash plays would indicate. But I think some team's going to like Lloyd and give him some money. And he's had some really good seasons in Jacksonville, and he had the big pick 6 against Mahomes and the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. He had a bunch of those plays this year.
People might bring up Cole Holcomb, who's coming off Pittsburgh now, but used to be with the Bengals. Well, because at one point I think he was a very good linebacker, but I think if you watch him play right now, it's just it's done. Like he can't move anymore.
Quay Walker, as well, former first rounder.
Yep.
Free agent. Underwhelmed his first couple years. I think last year was a little bit better.
Yeah, I just don't particularly like him as a player, so I wouldn't be in that market, but others might be.
There's a lot of players here.
Linebacker Jamal Adams is an intriguing player. Denzel Perryman is one of those guys who's going to stick on a roster for a million years and keep on thumping people. Who else did I have in here? Isaiah Simmons, just for special teams.
I got one.
And then there was a period of time.
There's a million linebackers available. This is insane.
Yeah. There was a period of time where the Lions were extremely high on Malcolm Rodriguez, and then he fell down the pecking order. They drafted Jack Campbell, et cetera, and he sort of fell out of favor. But, maybe he could have a Devin Bush type of, look at this guy. It's become really good.
One more name at linebacker. Ivan Pace Jr. At one point looked like, now the perfect fit would be Minnesota.
Ironic.
Blitz-heavy scheme. Pace is pretty good against the run. He's an outstanding blitzer/pass rusher for an undersized linebacker.
Why don't I see him on my list?
I see him on over the cap here. He's restricted. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
As a UFA. So he's on the restricted list. So maybe not. Either way, I love Ivan Pace.
Yeah.
Great fit in Minnesota, even though they haven't played it as much the last couple of years. All right, corner and safety. I didn't get to notes on these guys.
Okay.
N'Shawn Wright at corner.
Yeah.
For the Bears.
Now that's a scream. That one screams buyer beware.
That's my buyer beware guy. He had
Number one,
he was so good last.
It's this very season that you labeled him as basically useless. Like it's within the same calendar year that you basically were like, that guy's a liability and he's a problem.
He was a below average player.
Yeah.
For the beginning of his career.
And then he went on a run of making spectacular plays, game-changing turnover plays basically every week.
Forced a lot of turnovers.
Right.
Some great interceptions, forced fumbles. Did he have the forced fumble on Jalen Hurts on the tush-push? Was that him?
Yeah, I think so.
He made some huge plays for the Bears. And that scares me.
Yes.
That would be sustainable.
That's the thing. It's like, is that predictive?
Because he still has some ugly plays. He still has some. He's out of position. He's getting whooped on double moves. Like there's some bad stuff in there.
It's a classic case of like, what are you using the plays to say? Like you're not taking them away from him. They're still descriptive. He was spectacular last year because he was making
for the future.
Right. He was spectacular last year because he was making all of these game-changing plays. The question is there any chance whatsoever he does that again next year?
Now, the other end of that would be this dude's 6'4",
right,
and figured it out.
Sure.
That would be the other angle that you could. This dude took him a while, 6'4", projectable corner with traits, and just took him a bit, and now he's there. I would probably let someone else take that chance, but that's also, in the range of possibilities.
Depending on the money, I guess. Like there's a dollar figure
of
that I would be interested in him for.
I think Alontae Taylor, the cornerback from the Saints, is similar to that. He's more of a nickel, but like similar. When you watch the Saints, you see a lot of big plays. When you watch the Saints, though, you also see a lot of big plays against him through the years. But there are games where it's like, dude had 4 or 5 pass breakups or whatever. Made a lot of big plays, but there's some boom or bust to Alante Taylor's game as well. Mm-hmm. Jack Jones has some similarities, right? Like you have big pick sixes with the Raiders, Christmas Day against the Chiefs. He's had some really big plays, but he's always seemed to, like a Stephon Diggs, just run his course in a couple different situations.
Yeah.
Reek Woolen,
Yeah.
hitting free agency, is going to be one of the more fascinating names at 27 years old.
I was kind of impressed by him last season. Like he's sort of fallen out of favor a little bit in Seattle, and I imagine they're letting him walk. But I actually thought any time he was on the field last year, he kind of made an impact for that defense.
It's one of those careers where it doesn't make perfect sense because coming out, he had, remember the 2022 NFL Combine was some of the greatest performances we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Trayvon Walker, maybe the best edge rush workout we've ever seen, mm-hmm. and Reek Woolen, maybe the best cornerback workout we've ever seen, rivaled slightly by Zion McCollum that same exact year. So both of those players,
and they were two of the greatest workouts of period.
Size, speed, and change of direction. You usually don't get all three. You get size and speed, guy can't change direction, but 3-cone was incredible, 40 incredible, and he's a monster. And he goes out there and he is a former receiver, and he was not productive in college. He was supposed to take 3 years to figure it out, and he goes out, has 6 picks as a rookie, and he's challenging Sauce Gardner for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So it didn't make sense in the fact that, the year 3 projectable player was doing it in year 1 and playing really well. And there's been some ups and downs since then, but in totality, it's been like a pretty good, dependable player. The interceptions have come down. This is what we're saying on Nashawn Wright, right?
Yeah.
If Woolen had 6 interceptions year 1, you're not going to say he's going to do that. He hasn't touched that. He's had 4 the last 2 years. So you don't project that going forward. But I don't know, man. Someone's going to look at him and say he's been a good overall player, and he still has that size, speed, and you don't want to throw deep on Reek Woolen all that often.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the other part of it that doesn't really make sense is that after that spectacular start where he hit the ground running and looked great, he then kind of regressed a bit.
Well,
it's like keep that going
in reverse.
But
he also had that awful taunting penalty.
Yeah, that's not great. But yeah, the size, athleticism, speed thing, plus the ball playing ability, plus again, I think last year he was actually pretty good. I think he's a really intriguing option for some people. I definitely would be looking at him.
Anyone else at corner? Jamel Dean.
Yeah, Jamel Dean is still a very good cornerback. I think he should absolutely be on a lot of teams' lists in terms of players to look at. Fits every scheme, works. I'd definitely be looking at him.
A monster at corner. He's had a really good career. He's hitting 30.
Yeah.
30 years old. So that's usually the cutoff point.
Borderline.
Like Tre'Davious White is 31, and he's already, hit the wall twice in his career. Now he's bounced back.
But that's the thing.
But he's hit the wall twice. So he's on this list. I'm just saying he's 31. Doesn't he feel much older because of all the injuries and the ups and downs? But Jamel Dean's 30 is what I'm trying to say here.
Jamel Dean, I think, should definitely. You don't want to give him too long a contract, but I think he's still a very good player and should be on the list for any team that really needs a cornerback. Tre'Davious White was on my list of interesting players, though, to talk about because he's 31 years old. He just had basically the best season he's had since like 2021, maybe, before the injuries hit, right? Before his career really just got knocked sideways by all these injuries, and then he came back and he just wasn't. I mean, remember, when he was playing with the Rams, it's like this dude is toast. I mean, he is just done. He can't play anymore. Forget it. It's just all she wrote. It's a nice career, but unfortunately the injuries have ruined him, and he's not the same guy anymore. He came back to Buffalo this year really just because they had injuries. It's like, well, let's bring back Tre'Davious. We're familiar with him type of thing, right? And actually ends up basically starting the whole year because of the injuries. And for most of the year, he was pretty good and actually getting better as the year wore on. Like, if anything, he started off a little bit slow, and then by the second half of the season, he was really good.
Maybe the reason they beat the Jags.
Maybe his best game was that game. He had, 3 pass breakups or whatever in that game, was making a ton of plays. I would be kind of interested in seeing what he can do now this year for a team that isn't Buffalo.
At 31 years old.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not like signing him to a 5-year contract or anything, but based off last year, he just looked like he could absolutely still play again.
You done with this? Great. All right. We're almost done, Benny and Tobes. You guys are doing a good job here. Who else are we missing here as far as Jalen Watson, Chiefs cornerback, hitting the market here. He's had a nice little career as a former 7th-round pick. Press man corner. Had some ups and downs at times. But, like, again, it's like relative to 7th-round draft status here for the Chiefs. He's done a nice job for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the two, where's Greg Newsome and is Martin Emerson as well? Are they both free agents now?
Are they both?
I see Emerson on one list.
Newsome
I know
definitely
Newsome is.
Yeah.
Again, interesting move. Jags trading for him, former 1st-round pick. And the Newsome-Emerson swap during the season is what it was. But Newsome has shown some potential, and he's only 26. Remember, the Browns draft, Andrew Berry, drafts the youngest players in the NFL relative to all other GMs. So when they do hit second contract status, they're at 25, 26 years old. That's Newsome right now at 26. He was one of the youngest players in the draft when he got drafted a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be intrigued on kicking the tires on Newsome. Again, his career's been up and down, but his high-end play has been pretty good. Low-end play has not been, so it's definitely a risk. But, there's a reason the Jags were willing to make that deal to basically swap interesting cornerback prospects. I don't know that it worked out necessarily for either team, but Newsome would be a guy I'd be looking at.
Rasul Douglas has been a decent rent-a-corner the last couple of years. He's 32. And Eric Stokes, still only 27, former 1st-rounder, relative to, in a disappointing Raiders season, he was decent last year with very little pass rush and very little anything for the Raiders last year.
Asante Samuel basically just made it back as well. Remember, he'd been...
Junior.
Yeah, junior. Asante Samuel Sr. not made it back. Junior has been injured and basically was on the shelf for most of last year. Made it back towards the end of the year with the Steelers. But the fact that he made it back and is sort of theoretically healthy now makes him an interesting option.
I'm still intrigued by Asante Samuel. I think he's always been a very good zone player. It's a zone-heavy league. I think there's room for him.
That was the reason he was unsigned for so long, because of the injury, and teams just weren't going there yet. But he's back now theoretically.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. We're not doing kickers and punters. I'm not even going to click that. But safeties to wrap it up. Jaquan Brisker, I've always been a Jaquan Brisker fan.
You have.
Concussions hurt his 2024 season. It's a little up and down in his career, but he hits free agency at 27 years old. Both Bears safeties. Brisker and then Kevin Byard.
Yeah.
Byard's another, like Tre'Davious White. There were points where it looked like he was done because he was part of that Eagles 2023 collapse. I just wanted to throw everybody out at that point in the secondary. But Byard made some huge plays in the secondary last year for the Bears. So both Bears safeties hit free agency here. Different types of players. Brisker heads into year 4 at age 27.
Very different age.
Byard is 33 years old, but, one of those safeties who looked like he could still play last year.
He did. I don't know how, that's a juggling act for a contract in terms of 32, 33 years old, 10-year veteran. What kind of deal can you give him? But yeah, absolutely. He showed that he can still play based off last year. There's a lot of interesting safeties, like Cameron Curl for the Rams, one of the two Camerons they got back there. Ed Reed Blankenship hitting free agency, a.k.a. the other one. And who else have we got that jumped out as someone to...
Alohi Gilman. Remember, he was part of the Odafe Owe trade.
Wingard/Wingard is a free agent, but obviously he has to go back to Jacksonville because we need the haircut.
Oh, yeah. So him, Anzalone. Let me get Gladstone on the horn here and see if he's considered...
The Barbarian.
You get the Barbarian back. You bring in Anzalone.
Right.
You got Wingard.
Get Wingard back.
Is there anyone else we're missing here?
Who else has got crazy?
Fabio, can he play?
He's got crazy long hair. They could throw into that defense.
Who else was I looking at here? Geno Stone back to free agency here. I don't think he'll go back to Cincinnati at this point.
One of the worst free agent signings in recent memory. And that's a great example of a guy who everything about his free agent year screamed buyer beware. He was a guy coming off a career year that had a bunch of turnovers involved, like the safety version of Deshaun Wright. And you're like, great season. I wouldn't be banking on him backing that up the next year, and the Bengals did, and it didn't work.
Jalen Thompson for the Cardinals.
Yep. All the Jalens. Jalen Thompson, Jalen Hawkins with the Patriots.
Different spellings.
Yeah, but Jalen's.
Let me sort by how many Jalens are there?
Maybe just those two, but they were right next to each other on my list.
Jalen Thompson, Jaquan Brisker,
Jalen Mills.
Now we're just reading names. Because it's been 2.5 hours, and we're just reading names.
Jalen Jones. See, Jalen's all over the place.
So I'll say the number of linebackers that we rattled off, way more than I even anticipated, and it's a pretty deep linebacker group. There's a decent group of safeties in the draft as well, and I think, again, a decent group of free agent options here. So I think the market's pretty rich at linebacker, less rich, but still there, I think, for safety, where there are some options here. So something to keep an eye on these next few weeks as the league year opens. Harrison Smith, all but retired from Minnesota.
Pretty much. I can't imagine. I think he basically has retired, and I don't imagine there's any way he's playing anywhere else.
Class of 2012 for him as well?
Yeah, I
Same
think so.
class as him, Levante, Wagner, Demario Davis, Russ. 2012. All right, man, that's a good show. Talked about a lot of players. I thought we'd rattle them off super quick.
Yeah.
Be out in an hour.
It's like you've never done this show before.
It's like I've never been here before. Do you want to, just ask you on air, Renner just put out his top 5 by position. What if we have him be the show for the top 5 show for next week?
You just Renner do our show for us?
Well, I mean, just get him on here and talk top 5s by position. He's got his draft prospects, top 5 by position. So the draft. So instead of doing the consensus board, we'd have to do it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
Get him in
sure,
here
if you
tomorrow,
can.
talk to him. Maybe we'll get Renner on here.
That's a rough comment from the chat. Absolutely can't stand the banter between these two. I'm out.
Wow.
Tough scene.
When I used to pitch in front of a scout, the Pirates are here to see me, the Yankees are here to see me, I'd always say, it's only one team. If I suck today,
it's only one.
It's only one. There's there's 29 others in baseball. And so if you lose one viewer because of our inane banter,
we just lost Lee Van Cleef, 358.
It's only one.
Yeah.
There's millions left. Millions remain if we lose one. We appreciate the rest of you that have stuck with us, going through all of the free agents. So you got something to sink your teeth into these next couple weeks, going back through our free agent analysis. So next week we're at the Combine. We'll do our mock draft Monday. We'll probably have one extra show or one normal show next week that we'll have pre-recorded. Might only be 2 full shows next week instead of the 3. But be subscribed because we'll be going live from there. Social media, we'll have shorts, we'll have some updates coming from Indy as the news, the rumblings, the prospect opinions start to come out. So we'll be active, but it might be in the form of one less show next week. After that, though, we're going to make up for it because the week after, we're fixing every team in 5 minutes. We're going to rebuild all 32 NFL teams Tuesday through Friday after a mock draft Monday post-Combine. Okay? So this is why you need to be subscribed and stick with us.
Every day.
We're going to go live after the Combine Sunday night in 2 weeks. Sunday night after the Combine, Monday morning mock draft, and then 4 straight shows. Fixing every team heading into free agency.
It's a lot.
And then we're going to have a free agency extravaganza. 5 hours live, 6 hours. Who knows how live we'll be, how long. A lot coming up here. Favorite time of year. You good?
Yep.
All right. Harrison, I got to order. We need more of these. We got requests coming in. What? All right, that's it for us. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Toby, Benny, good work. You guys are done. Your job is over. We'll see you again Monday with more Check the Mic.